I have you now.
They want to mess with my droid. They're going to pay for it.
This is the way.
You may fire when ready.
Blow that piece of junk out of the sky!
The way you're fighting, you wouldn't have lasted long.
Hello there.
The ability to speak does not make you intelligent.
I have to say the most maddening thing about Dreams and Madness is we still have no answers about who Baylan Skoll is. Who are you? You're an enigma wrapped in a question. He's really become a standout character for me and for a lot of people. On this show, it's no small part due to Ray Stevenson's phenomenal performance. But I don't really see his story wrapping up in just a single episode, so I'm going to be curious in what direction they're going to take him and his character given the unfortunate passing of Ray Stevenson. I've enjoyed the character so much I've begun to think of Tales of the Jedi episodes he could appear in. He's not the only highlight to the show, though. This episode, like every one before it, gave us a ton to talk about as we try to make sense of these murky Star Wars waters, these unexplored depths. My name is Carter, and this is the Star Wars Station. We've got a great show for you today. We're here to break down every aspect of the brand new episode of Ahsoka, Dreams and Madness. We even have a super secret special guest we'll bring on midway through the show for some much-needed insight into some of these moments. But with all that out of the way, I'm ready to dive head first into this story, head first into these murky Star Wars waters, and I could not do that without my diving partner, the charming Chiss himself, Colin Archer.
Hey, Chiss, I've been elevated.
Yeah, you got like an Ugnaught a couple weeks ago.
No, that's exciting. Hey, this episode, I think really the most significant part that I'm most excited to talk about is Ezra Bridger. And then that's exactly tied with what's exactly you said with Baylan Skoll. There's so much going on in this. You know, as far as ranking these episodes, it's kind of hard to follow up with the last one, right? I don't know where this is going to rank, but compared to some of the other ones. But this was the action episode, right? You know, the last ones had so many reveals, had so many cool scenes, and you got to really peel back the layers to look and see what is special about this episode. And Ezra is there, Baylan is there, Thrawn is there. This has everything, and we're here to talk about this and deliver a banger for you today.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be hard for us to be able to talk about how wonderful this episode was and how much it added to the Star Wars universe. So, Colin, we gave our rapid reactions to our Patreon listeners yesterday, and so we're going to play those reactions for you guys right now.
He doesn't seem to take a hint, this guy.
Colin, that was quite an episode. I was thrilled to get to see the politicking, all the lightsaber fights, a reuniting of our heroes. It was really, really fun to see. What'd you think? What were your initial knee-jerk reactions to this?
Oh, my goodness. You know, when you first look at it, it feels kind of, you know, you look at this last episode, there's so many reveals, there's so much going on, that at first glance, this episode doesn't, it's kind of like right on the coattails of the last. But then all these really cool action scenes and like Ezra doing what he does, how he's kind of like unlocked this form of no lightsaber ultra combat. It just seems really, really cool when you start peeling back the layers.
I'm a huge fan of Ezra's no lightsaber use right there. I'd love to see that continue. I thought that was super cool. Getting the Anakin scenes, the parallel between Luke and Leia calling to each other on Cloud City, all of these things felt quintessentially Star Wars. I was thrust into the fights that they were having. I was really, really bought into the fights, and it was nice to see something that I think we haven't seen in a lot of the Disney Plus shows, but that showed up in this, was a fight on multiple fronts. You had Ahsoka with her duel, you had Huyang in the air, you had Sabine and Ezra fighting the bandits, and, you know, that has a rich history in Star Wars. Return of the Jedi, there's 3 or 4 fights going on. The Battle of Naboo, there's 4 fights going on. And so when they layer those fights together, it's always really satisfying, and I was happy to get to see the return of that.
Yeah, and then just everything going on with all the fights. You know, the Noti being chased by the bandits reminds me of like a Native Americans chasing a wagon train or something like that. Mm-hmm. And this mounted combat that is not on speeders, right? And
the characters that we so know and love being brought back together to put in these high tense situations, and intermixing it all is Thrawn with all these machinations going on still.
Speaking of characters we know and love, I was so excited to see 3PO on screen and Anthony Daniels in the suit delivering lines, referencing Leia, interacting with Mon Mothma, obviously having a rapport with General Syndulla. That was just all really nice to get to see that dip back into the Rebellion, that dip back into the original trilogy. I was really, really heartened when I got to see that.
Yeah, and Leia behind the scenes. Gosh, we got a lot to talk about when it comes to that scene specifically. Borsfalia is almost jumping off the page into the screen here.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I really don't think we've seen the last of the problems that he's going to create. I think we're going to get to see a lot of that to come. You mentioned Thrawn. I loved so it's always kind of difficult to get Thrawn's character across as how good of a tactician he is, how steeped in art he is, and we still haven't really seen the art part that much in Ahsoka so far, but the tactical map and having that little camera droid there and the tactician of Thrawn, that was a really smart way to showcase his abilities right there. And Thrawn at his most fearsome. I mean, other than a naval engagement, which is bound to happen eventually, maybe not in the next episode, but, somewhere down the line, this is where Thrawn really gets to shine, is seeing these battles play out, basically on like a little map. If Thrawn were a real person, he would absolutely be a Star Wars Legion player. No doubt about it.
No doubt. With all the fancy painted miniatures and everything, him and Peter Cushing would be all over there kicking everybody's butt.
Wargaming it up. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and then there's so much to speculate with Baylan Skoll. I cannot wait to dive into that.
I know. More questions than answers still, and I'm really, really thrust into this idea that maybe Shin Hati, if we're calling on Heir to the Empire parallels, maybe Shin Hati is going to follow Mara Jade's path. Not in those books specifically, maybe at the end of The Last Command, but her journey through the expanded universe of coming over to the light side. I can already see Shin Hati moving in that direction. She hesitated when Ahsoka offered that hand.
Yeah,
and now
is real.
Without Baylan, I think she can go one of two ways. She can spiral and become much more evil, or she will be able to see the light eventually and kind of understand that Thrawn's about to abandon her. She did not secure Ezra. He just abandoned her in that field. She's going to get back there, and I don't think be very welcome.
Yeah, it's going to be quite the deal. This next episode is going to be a banger. I cannot wait.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I'm excited for the finale, but I'm also excited to get the meat of our coverage going, so let's hop right in. All right, Colin, so I go 8 o'clock yesterday, sit down in front of my TV, I settle in, and I see the Mon Mothma thumbnail. And I know immediately that this episode is what we are ready for. It's what we're ready to see. We're not going to get the weird Force world building that we got last episode. And by weird Force world building, I mean that in the absolute most endearing way possible, because that is my favorite aspect of Star Wars. But what I mean is we are getting political, fight the good fight, rebellion kind of Star Wars. And I think that's absolutely what this episode delivered for us.
Yeah, this first half was totally amazing. It said in the little description there what we wanted to see from the last one was it wrapping up with Hera and what happened with her. And wasn't this, there's a lot of action scenes across all these episodes. But speaking of Star Wars, I mean, this was really, really cool what happened in these scenes, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Speaking, it was really cool what happened in all of these scenes, and I was really happy that we got to dive in immediately into it. So the show was written by Dave Filoni. We've said that every time. Obviously, Dave wrote it. This was directed by Geeta Vasant Patel, and she's best known for working on House of Dragon. And I think you could kind of get some of the vibes of that, and if you are familiar with House of Dragon, I think you can see some of the leak through there.
Yeah.
But the episode opens over Coruscant to what looks like the same building from The Mandalorian Season 3 that Carson Teva was at, trying to get the military to move. And so I think we can pretty much assume that this is the headquarters of the Alliance military. This is where they all reside, as far as I can tell.
And the little committee there in front of is What was this committee? You recall what they're, because they're not defense.
Yeah, no, yeah, it is. It's the Defense Coalition is the committee the senators are on, but this is a war tribunal, from what I can tell. They're in a courtroom. It obviously appears to be a military court, and the very first thing that you notice, or at least that I noticed, is Admiral Gale Akbar, hero of the rebellion, sitting on that panel. You have they didn't balance the panel very well I guess because they focused on Xiono so much they put him beside him. You got two nobodies on one side. You got a Celestin and another human, and then you've got Mon Mothma in the middle, and then you got Akbar, and then you've got Xiono. And politics is back in a big way in the Star Wars, in a way we haven't seen since the prequels. I mean, we saw it in the Clone Wars. And Andor. Well, we saw it in Andor. And but since Andor, we have not seen politics of this level in Star Wars.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I'm confused. Was it Xiono or Thalia up there? I forget his name.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell the difference.
Yeah, I said in Rapid Reactions, he jumped off the page. I'm serious. It was so cool to see. He almost hit that character note for note, word for word, with onerous and like, I strenuously object, right?
And you look at him, you look at the way that Xiono is portraying and the way that he's coming across just like Thalia, like you said, not just in the Heir to the Empire books, but as Thalia gets continued the expanded universe. So for listeners who are unfamiliar with Borsk Thalia, he's a Bothan antagonist in the Star Wars expanded universe.
Bring Bothans to the regular Star Wars.
Yeah. And he's politically motivated. He's an antagonist insofar that he is super selfish. He is not evil. He's not siding with the Empire. In the expanded universe, he's a Yuuzhan Vong denier. He says that the Vong are not invading the galaxy in any way. And so this Xiono character is taking that exact same path when Hera tries to use the term Imperial Remnant. And Xiono immediately says, this is politically charged. This is meant to foment fear. Basically right out of Thalia's playbook regarding the Yuuzhan Vong.
Yeah, and the whole thing is just really cool, and I really love these literary tie-ins, even if they're not called out exactly by name, right? I mean, who else is here that can even call back to this? Well, Leia. Right?
Leia.
And, gosh, just so many fun little tidbits. And then the other major thing here is what? The timeline that we get.
Yeah, you're right. I want to talk for a moment, though, about the gear switch we see regarding the politics in this time, because I think that's something we need to touch on real quick. We got, in a big way, politics in the prequels, and this was kind of, the original trilogy was a little political, but the prequels really showed us politics in Star Wars. But those were... In the prequels, they're complaining about the bureaucracy of the Republic, but the politics on display are way more rhetorical, as in rhetoric. These politics felt like red tape, like government oversight, like this is way more bureaucratic. All of this happening in this committee room back here. It's a different feel that I feel like we've only gotten in Star Wars books up until this point.
Yeah, and like actors, like political actors walking in and out. Carson Teva comes in and he shakes his head no. And, I mean, this happens in real life. And these backroom deals being made and all this other stuff to advance an agenda and all this other stuff. It is, and then there's Thalia, Xiono over here just being looking out for we don't know what interest.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We have no idea if he's like a First Order collaborator or if he is really just a doofus,
contrarian.
Yeah.
He has whatever agenda. Like. Thalia, scroll back and listen to our podcast about that. You have to weed through it. But
the Heir to the Empire episodes.
Heir to the Empire episodes. They're really good. We talk a lot about Thalia. And this kind of reinforces, I don't think Thalia was really bad or he was a thorn in the main character's sides. Xiono's a thorn in these main character sides, but it's also, he doesn't overtly appear to have a corrupt interest or some sort of nefarious interest. He's looking out for like a peace of mind or non-disruptive interest almost or something.
No, you're absolutely right. We have, he is in a battle of words with Hera, and Mon Mothma is the judge essentially, and so she has to sit back and be impartial. You see Xiono say Hera ignored direct orders. Hera hits him with, no, I was ignoring you. She's just really easy to just hit people over the head with that kind of stuff. You watch Genevieve O'Reilly has some amazing facial features. And you notice this in Andor. You notice this here. She has great with face acting, and she's like choking back a smile. I was just very impressed with the way that Mon Mothma had to choke back the smile. She hates this guy. She absolutely hates this guy.
Yeah. And he probably weaseled his way onto that thing, onto that committee. It's a good thing there's other people in the galaxy that can right the wrongs, I guess we could say.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so you mentioned Carson Teva. He enters, and this is when I first noticed, even though Hera was wearing it, they're both wearing the same thing, so I guess we can assume this is like the New Republic's dress blues. They look super sharp, like cosplay level sharp. I would totally wear one of these. They look awesome.
Yeah, they need to sell this stuff at Disney World or something like that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And then, Xiono, I will say, he makes a fair point when he's reading Hera's report, and he's like, Jedi and not Jedi and space whales and star maps. And it's like, for a regular person in the galaxy, this is extremely fanciful. In the New Republic, where no Jedi Order exists, the Jedi have been gone for decades, it does sound way far-fetched to just average person. They're going to be like, oh yeah, this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
To Mon Mothma and Hera, this is rote. This is like nothing new.
You're absolutely right. And so then you mentioned Carson Teva pops up and says, well, what about the conflict on Mandalore? And that was a big deal. Why was that a big deal, though?
Oh, gosh, because that sets the time frame for when all of these episodes are taking place. And I think it's safe to assume that this is immediately after Mando Season 3. Because he says this takes place, what is this, immediately. Those events on Mandalore had just taken place. He speaks of it as it's in the past. And so recall what exactly happened. And Moff Gideon was defeated by the Mando Din Djarin, by Grogu. You can't leave him out because
can't leave out Bo-Katan.
Yeah, well, it was Grogu and Din. I was just thinking about kind of how crazy the scene was of them defeating those royal guards, the Praetorians, right? And then of course Bo-Katan and crushing that Darksaber. I mean, these were major events, and Mandalore's hopefully going to be a major player in whatever Mandoverse movie we get, right?
Yeah. There's a clear buildup from the Remnant here. I'd totally agree with you there. I also, what you'll notice is you get Xiono in this moment. He is such a rhetorician. He is constantly hitting these points over and over. You're putting the Republic in danger. He's not letting anyone get a word in edgewise. He is sensationalizing his own words as much as he claims that Imperial Remnant is sensational.
Yeah, exactly right. It's all spin. It's all optics. And this is why it's so akin to Thalia, because he was the exact same way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He was. I mean, it's just Dave was Dave's very familiar with these books. Just as a general Star Wars fan, when Dave would have been a Star Wars fan, he would have been reading these books. And so, as you've said already, he's jumping right off the page. So Xiono recommends Hera to be court-martialed, and then you hear off-screen, and oh, how rude.
I don't need an identification.
I lit up. I was filled with joy in hearing that voice.
Oh my gosh, wasn't everybody? This was such a sensational. I mean, you don't even see anything yet, and you get this tingles all over your body. So fun.
He says, I am C, and Mon Mothma finishes it. She says 3PO, and you just, obviously this shows the viewers that Mon Mothma has this rapport with 3PO, that they're friends, essentially, and you get the light music that the Kiners put in this situation really picks up and gives C-3PO the kind of deference that a character like he deserves without making it like a weird lingering shot on C-3PO that you sometimes get, or that you often get in, movies where they're bringing back old characters.
Yeah, he didn't have a grand entrance. He's another person, or he's another entity in this galaxy, and he's there to do his job.
Right. They paid him the due respect.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like when in the Spider-Man movie that they just came out with, what is that one called? With the two other Spider-Men.
Yeah, the multiverse one.
They spend on Andrew Garfield's entrance and Tobey Maguire's entrance. Spend a couple seconds on a lingering camera shot without them saying anything, and it's just doesn't fit. People don't do that, and they didn't do that with 3PO, which is good. But he got the deference he needed through that music and through the character reactions.
Exactly right.
So 3PO is there on behalf of Leia to lie on her behalf. And say that she authorized the mission for Hera to go on this. And then Xiono says, are we going to take the word of a mere droid? And I thought Chopper was going to come over the table. It was hilarious. Carson has to put his arms back. He's like, whoa. Whatever Chopper was muttering was not okay for TV. He was certainly being censored there. We learned that Leia is the leader of the Defense Council and that Xiono, he definitely had the authorization to tell Hera no, as we learned from some dialogue from Mon Mothma, but that Leia was not consulted, obviously, about this as the leader of the Defense Council. And this whole scene just drips of that Bloodline novel that you and I have mentioned a couple times.
Yeah, it really does. There's, again, a lot of little things going on. All these political players and all this stuff. And like, in my mind, C-3PO walks in, and I know it's exactly analogous to those novels, but I thought, Leia's off on another planet and getting these communications, these messages. But what was the planet with the cat people, the
Nogri.
The Nogri.
That's what you're talking about?
I feel like,
Honegger.
on Honegger. I feel like she's on Honegger right now doing whatever she's doing.
Right. I was, what my thought process went to, because I saw a few people complain, they're scared of putting Leia on screen because they don't want to recast and they don't want to deep fake, so they're just going to put 3PO as a substitute. And that may be the case. I'm not willing to say that's not the case. We need to see the next episode. Maybe Leia shows up in that. But I will say that easily just putting into a headcanon right there that she's taking care of baby Ben Solo. She's got a toddler running around. Of course she's taking care of him.
My only counter to that would be, in the slightest of way, is even in those books, she was with child, and Mon Mothma was like, no, you go here, and no, you go here. So it's a slightly different Mon Mothma, right?
You're right. You're right. So Mon Mothma is happy to see 3PO. Hera's happy to see 3PO. He saved the day. Hera's not court-martialed. I was happy to see the rapport that 3PO and Hera had because they served throughout the rebellion together. It's filled in the Star Wars comic books. It's just, you would use context clues. They were both at Yavin, and so it just makes sense.
They were together for months.
For years.
Years. Well, I mean, can you imagine being at Yavin and surviving that? You'd be in that moment, so huddling up with your friends, just be like, oh my God. I mean, because it's one of those things, like, you just die instantly, vaporized into nothing.
Right.
C-3PO, I guess, would be out there, oh my, the odds of doing whatever.
Right.
Maybe.
And then, so 3PO starts to talk to Teva, and Mon Mothma and Hera come together, and Mon Mothma is legitimately and sincerely concerned about Thrawn's return, but you can just tell through the body language and the delivery of these lines, she feels powerless to stop it. That very clearly, Xiono is not the only Imperial Remnant denier. We know that from the Bloodline book. We also just know that from intuition, that of course he's not the only guy that thinks this way. And so she is kind of shackled here. She knows the threat's coming, and there's nothing they can do about it.
So, pondering on this episode, between drives here and there, I'm like, what in the world is Xiono smoking? Because, like, what happened at the very start of the season? 2 quote-unquote Jedi show up and just wreck a prison shuttle, right? I mean, totally wreck this thing. And this is how many times that this high-value prisoner has been broken out of a Republic transport. I mean, yeah, one thing where Moff Gideon, and who knows how he got out, well, they don't know. And it takes Mando and some other folks to figure this thing out because of what is the metal?
Beskar.
Beskar being in the thing, right? And then, but there's no doubt about what's going on with this other prison shuttle. And not even that. Previous Mando, what is this, season 2? They're busting people out of another prison shuttle. I feel sorry for the Republic prison shuttle industry. They have to have the lowest rep and the lowest capability. It's like, oh, your side of the prison shuttle. Excuse me. Why? Please no. So, I mean, like, what is up with Xiono? I mean, because all these high-value prisoners going away, and what is exactly like you said, this does not compute a little bit.
No. I will say that this is not the first time Hamato Xiono's shown up. You haven't watched this, which is okay because most people haven't. I've only watched it once. I'll probably only ever watch it once. But Star Wars Resistance is an animated TV show geared for kids slightly younger than Rebels. So we're starting to get into like young kid territory where it's very clearly made for young kids. This is like 7 and 9-year-olds probably. And it's a show set during the sequels. And the main character's name is Kazuda Xiono, and that is Hamato Ziono's son. And Hamato shows up in 2 scenes. He shows up in the first of the series when he's trying to convince his son not to join the Resistance. He's a senator for Hosnian Prime still. And then after Hosnian Prime's destroyed in The Force Awakens, Hamato Ziono is conveniently not on planet. Although he was the senator of this planet, he's now essentially, like Leia, senator for a diaspora of people like Alderaan. And he is then convincing Ziono to leave the Resistance because it's putting a target on their family's backs. And so I'm starting to get feelings with those scenes from Resistance, plus these scenes in Ahsoka, that he is probably closer to collaborator than Borsk Phalia ever was.
Yeah, that's certainly the easiest path for sure.
Yeah, and we'll see. We have no indication. I'm really enjoying the way that he's performing, but what I'm really enjoying is the way that Hera is playing off of him, and that is all credit to Mary Elizabeth Winstead. She is doing a great job as Hera. I feel like there had been some stops and starts. I feel like of the characters that we had seen in animation that came over to live action, I may have had to warm up the most to Mary Elizabeth Winstead, but now that I am warmed up to her, I really am getting Hera vibes, specifically when she's having these interactions and these verbal jousts with Ziono, is when the Hera is brought out in her the most.
Yeah, she really does a phenomenal job. You know, I've followed her for quite a long time. The Fargo is the one that comes to mind. That's where she met you,
her husband. Yeah.
And then Ramona Flowers. What movie is that?
Oh, that is Scott Pilgrim. Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Yeah, and a couple other things. She was in a Cloverfield movie, the one with the big monsters and some other stuff.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And everything she's in, you know, she relatively works so few things, but everything she works in is impactful in the extreme. And gosh, I really hope this thing sticks. I hope we see Muse, Mary Elizabeth Winstead's Hera for a long time. Mm-hmm. I really do.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you.
She's the whole package in a sense of she comes with Chopper. She comes with Jason. I want to see more of Jason's story. I want to see more of Chopper's story. And then we know somehow Ezra and the rest of the gang are going to come back. And we need Zeb in the picture too, right? Yeah.
I wonder who was watching Jason in this, because Chopper, his babysitter, was in the courtroom. So I'm curious where he was. So after these courtroom scenes, we go to title screen. We get the title, Dreams and Madness. I don't have any strong feelings about this title. You know, sometimes I'm really like, this is a great title, and sometimes I'm like, well, this one I'm probably like, on. It's fine. I don't think it really related to much in the episode, but it's not a problem.
Yeah, I'm racking my brain trying to figure out the relevance and how they came up with this. What are the dreams? There's a lot of madness in a sense, but even then it's like controlled. Mm-hmm. So
it was much less mystic than the last episode, and that's why I'm wondering why that might be the case. But we open up from the title screen to Ahsoka using some Anakin Skywalker training holos. And this scene was super reminiscent of the Tales of the Jedi episode Practice Makes Perfect, where Anakin's training Ahsoka to take on the clone troopers. And how he's, you're going to face more than droids on the battlefield. He says as much in these holos. These holos existing's right along with Anakin's philosophy from that episode, and it's certainly intentional. Dave made those, Dave made this. It's absolutely... I wouldn't be surprised if he wrote Ahsoka and then wrote that episode.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I got those vibes exactly. And, oh my gosh, seeing these hollow things, and at the end, she puts it in a box and says, he made 20 or more of these things. That is so impactful. Mm-hmm, I already want to go make a custom box and fill it with fake mini HD cards or something like that. You know,
I totally agree. Getting on screen Hayden once again is just such a huge treat. Anytime we're going to get him is going to be phenomenal. And we also get the first live action mention of Asajj Ventress. We got references to Dooku and Grievous, but I think the more staggering thing is Asajj Ventress, a character who has only shown up in the Clone Wars. She has shown up in nothing else but the Clone Wars animated series. She's in it a lot. She's a main character, but general audiences are not familiar with her, and we got an on-screen mention.
And she is so cool. What her origins are, what happens to her in the stuff.
Well, and she's topical. She's a Night Sister as well. I mean, she doesn't have something to do with this, but she was raised among the Dathomiri witches.
You know, I'm sorry, it just occurred to me. I want to take just a brief step back. This box of holograms is Anakin Skywalker's holocron.
Yes, essentially. You know,
That's exactly what it is.
We saw in Rebels, Ezra have access to one of Anakin's holocrons, and this is essentially the same thing. And I'm really curious what the future is for these 20 recordings. I don't think we lingered on that box for no reason. Like, we now know, because of the Mandalore timeline, Luke and Ahsoka have already interacted. Has Luke seen these? Will Rey have access to these in her new Jedi Order film? I mean, there's a lot of open questions here.
I mean, because if you don't know what a holocron is, like in the Darth Bane books, I don't want to go too much into that, but there's holocron stuff in that, Sith holocron specifically. And you could buy a holocron at Galaxy's Edge.
Well, and Jedi holocrons show up in the Clone Wars. They show up in
video
Rebels.
Games. Yeah.
They're all over the place, and it's a storage device for a Force user.
And so they're really cool, and kind of to see this brush up against a holocron, it just occurred to me while we were talking about this. I wish I thought about a lot more to have more to say about it, but it's so cool to think of this thing existing out there.
And, you know, it's important for the future of the Jedi Order, which this time is tenuous, obviously. I mean, you've got a lot of things floating around that are going to be beneficial to a future Jedi Order, though. You got these recordings. You've got the existence of Hu Yang himself. You have the sacred texts from The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. I mean, you've got a grouping of these things that could really result in some pretty awesome stuff for these future films.
That laying the groundwork for all that stuff is really cool. I hope Luke Skywalker's involved in some way. But, like, again, Hu Yang, we are so spoiled by having him in this.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. You know, you have that scene in just a moment where David Tennant and Ahsoka, well, Hu Yang and Ahsoka, played by David Tennant playing Hu Yang, they have an argument, and Hu Yang gets really flustered. It's like, basically, you don't care what I think. And David Tennant is just the reason that those lines are so good and the reason that Hu Yang is so impactful. It's been great. And in those scenes, you get chipper Ahsoka. You get her happy. She feels
joking,
right now. You know, there was clearly something off, and it's been resolved, which is a good thing. You can tell it's been resolved by the fact that she says, you know, he was a good master, in reference to Anakin, which is something I don't think we've heard her say since the confrontation with Vader.
Yeah, it's sort of like, up until this point, he was Darth Vader, and after she went to the world between worlds, he's more than that now.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's reconciled that balance sheet for her. You know, it's been like that for Luke. Right, and he can, but it's hard for Luke to impart that to Leia. And of course, the galaxy's never going to have their mind changed.
Yeah, exactly. And Leia never really gets her mind changed. I mean, she copes with it a little bit more when it's exposed that she's Darth Vader's daughter, but it's just, you know, that level of trauma is something that they've got to come to on their own, and Ahsoka has to. I mean, I'm sure Luke's had the conversation with her that she was redeemed. I mean, it's even referenced in the Book of Boba Fett, but it's not the same.
It's going to be so hard for Leia to feel what Luke feels. He felt in that moment, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So we have, after the Hu Yang Ahsoka argument, we have the Purrgil drop out of hyperspace into an Imperial minefield. Ahsoka and Hu Yang jettison from the mouth of the Purrgil. And then the Purrgil hyperspace away. After Hu Yang says, oh, at least the whales are providing some cover, boom, they're gone. Because why would you stick around? There's all these exploding balls at our graveyard.
Yep.
And so Ahsoka and Hu Yang have to face the mines alone. And Ahsoka's a pretty good pilot, and that's something that is not mentioned. You know, every Star Wars character is a good pilot, right? It's Anakin's a good pilot, Luke's a good pilot, Han, Hera, everybody's a good pilot.
She's a good pilot in a shuttle.
Yeah, and we don't ever have, it's never referenced that Ahsoka's a good pilot, which I like, because it can get overbearing when every Star Wars character is, oh, they're the best pilot in the galaxy. It's like, well, there's one of those, and you say it about everybody. But she is a good one, because she obviously learned from Anakin.
Well, and then of course the Force is around, and in the debris field, these are carcasses, or probably really Force attenuated beings, and then also the fighters are useless. They can't hurt the ship.
Right.
They can't hit anything.
Right.
They can't fly through this stuff.
So they hide in those whale bones when they get through the mines, and if you notice, if you look closely, there's these little white little shrimp things floating around out there.
Yeah, it's an ecosystem in that whole band. It's really cool, the attention to detail.
It is. Also, I'm really loving the sound of the blasters on this ship. Like, props to the guys over at Skywalker Sound, because it sounded a little bit like a digital keystroke, like a digital typewriter sound. And I didn't notice them in the battle over Cetos, but with those fighters coming in, it was like plink, 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 and I really liked the unique sound. I thought they did a good job. Yeah, and obviously, I just replicated it perfectly, so you don't got to listen to the episode. Plink, 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 plink is exactly what it sounds like.
I got really big Clone Wars vibes of Obi-Wan pursuing Boba Fett in this one, weaving in and out of the asteroids. I was waiting for a mine to go off, but it didn't.
Right, yeah, those mines could have been, if all those mines slammed, yeah. So we cut next to Grand Admiral Thrawn and Elsbeth. Then Enoch has let them know that they have triggered the minefield, and so Thrawn is then delivered all of the information from the Inquisitorial database on Ahsoka. Elsbeth brings this on a silver platter. That was a really nice natural inclusion of the Inquisitorius.
It was so good. And that's such a blink and you miss it little tidbit. The Inquisitorial database, that she has that. I mean, like, what untold treasure trove of data does Morgan Elsbeth have on that hyperspace ring?
And now, much more dangerously, Thrawn has on that hyperspace ring.
Yes.
Elsbeth is kind of, and I'll make this point in a little while, but she's kind of a fool. Not literally, but she's, like, made out that way. And so Thrawn with this stuff is way more fearsome than Elsbeth with this stuff.
Exactly right. I mean, well, this is one thing, and it's worth a little bit of discussion. Morgan Elsbeth has served her purpose.
Yeah.
And so...
Yeah. I think the Great Mothers are the only reason she's even still around.
Yeah.
Because I think Thrawn, his patience wears thinner and thinner with her every episode.
Yeah, as soon as she makes his mistake, we know what's going to happen with Thrawn and Elsbeth, right?
So this information's delivered to Thrawn, and then his face. He reads the datapad, and then his face. He looks scared for just a moment, and then he kind of goes back to his stoic look. And when he learns that her master was Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah, it's just that realization. You can see the uptick in the eyes. Like, I want to say white as saucers like a cartoon, but it's that exactly like shit. That realization that, he knew a Jedi was coming, but he didn't know.
Right. He's not used to being caught off guard. Thrawn's not. And so that realization was important. And there's a little bit added to this relationship. So in the book Thrawn Alliances, which is a canon book written by Timothy Zahn, it's the sequel to the self-titled Thrawn book. Thrawn meets and teams up with Anakin on the planet Batuu during the Clone Wars. And
I've been to Batuu.
You were at Batuu last week.
That's right.
And so he teams up with Anakin during the Clone Wars. They have, the whole book's about them teaming up. And so he's very familiar with Anakin. And while this reaction is not a direct reference to the book, I know that people who are huge fans of those books, there's a whole subgroup of Star Wars fans, a whole section of Twitter called Chiss Twitter. Like, they love the Thrawn books. Like, they're Star Wars fans second to being Thrawn fans, and they ate this up. They were in love with it. I loved it too, but they went crazy for this. And I was glad because, as much as they can, I don't want to see books get overwritten. Dave kind of overwrote parts of the Ahsoka novel for the Tales of the Jedi episode where she faces the Inquisitor.
Which he has a right to, because it's his character.
He does have a right to. I'm not offended by the fact that he did. And if he had overwritten this, it's fine. Obviously the live-action portrayals take precedent over the books, but anytime they don't have to do it and they can keep stuff in line, it's way better. It makes me way more comfortable because it's rewarding to be steeped in this interconnected universe.
It really is, and I'm a broken record. Going back to the pages, so cool.
So then Thrawn delivers my least favorite line in the episode, and I think that this is a little bit of a problem, and I'm worried that we could slip into this. I think it was corrected in this episode, but I could see it becoming a problem in the future. And that is, he says, if she's anything like her master, she will be unpredictable and quite dangerous. And then I want to say that it's a big problem he said this. Not that that is true. She is unpredictable like Anakin. But then his next logical step is, so we need to let her do what she wants, have this illusion of choice, so we can always be one step ahead of her. And this is like, Thrawn's a total sued for saying this. Like, it's not, that's the impression that a dumb person thinks what a smart person sounds like. That doesn't mean anything. That's not a tactic, letting her just do what she wants. That's just an excuse to move the story along, Dave. And so I don't think it's a Dave thing specifically. This came up a lot in Rebels, where they said they couldn't make Darth Vader the main villain of Rebels because the good guys have to win a lot in those animated shows. They're still designed for kids, of course, and so the good guys need to be winning on a consistent basis. And so you can't have your bad guy like Skeletor shaking his fist at the sky every week, saying, I'll get you next time, Rebel crew. And so couldn't do Darth Vader. So they brought Thrawn in to do that because every time the Rebels succeed, the last scene of every episode is Thrawn going, yes, exactly as I planned. And it's just like, at some point, it's not, man. Like, at some point. And so I thought that this line about, we need to let her do what she wants because then we will blah, 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 blah. It's like, that's not true. You just kind of wrote Ahsoka into a corner right here, and now you need to be able to get her out of it. And so, like I said, it's remedied later in this episode. I just hope that it doesn't become a problem down the line.
Yeah, I really don't have anything to add to that. That's insightful. I mean, maybe it's the cartoon jumping into the real life series or something. Sure.
So we then get to see Ezra and Sabine trucking along through the Peridia Prairie.
On the wagon train.
In their mobile homes with the naughty. And Ezra is learning about the state of the galaxy and the events of the original trilogy, which was pretty enchanting to me because when you watch Rebels and you see his and Kanan's sacrifices both, they were crucial to this outcome. If Thrawn had been around, it would have been different. And I really like the fact that Ezra's hearing all of this rewarding information, and it's directly because of his sacrifice. And so it really was enchanting to me to get to see Ezra finally learning that his sacrifice was not for naught, that the Empire does not still exist.
Yeah, these whole scenes here and all the discussion is actually really magical. I mean, to me, it is like an old Western. And these two characters, like, I watched Lonesome Dove a couple weekends ago. It's a miniseries that came on when I was a kid. I got to watch it with my dad. And it's about a cattle drive from South Texas and the border of Mexico all the way up to Montana. And at the end, it's really sad. One of the friends dies and asked for his body to be taken back to Texas, which is a huge trial for the other main character.
And that's the sequel, right? And the sequel's
no,
way
that's
worse.
The original one.
No. His body being taken back is the sequel.
No, it's all in the same 4 hour and a half
really?
episodes.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, gotcha.
It feels like a sequel because the main plot of the story's ended. This is another primary plot.
Mm-hmm.
And so, obviously Ezra's not dead. Could be. We don't know what's going to happen in the next episode, but it's that doing whatever it is for a friend, right? And that reuniting, accomplishing a huge task. And I mean, and this is kind of a setting almost exactly from scenes. It's not a wagon train per se, but it's a cattle drive, and there's a chuck wagon, and all these cowboys doing all their thing. It's all these primitive living going to accomplish a task. There are these nomadic people on this planet going to safety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's a good analogy.
And so this one is a really magical scene for me,
mm-hmm.
Especially in these next ones when they get attacked.
I agree. And you have the dialogue here, there's a little bit of sequel legwork done here. Sabine says, and the Emperor's dead. That's what people say. So they're saying that among the galaxy there's some disbelief, which why would there not be? I mean, there's no body. Obviously, there wasn't going to be a body, but there's no body, and there's no way for them to prove that the Emperor's dead. And so I do understand that trepidation can exist among some of the members of the galaxy, and so it does a little bit of sequel legwork there. And then what they did for general audiences, which is important and good, and this was the absolute right choice, is they say that the war ended with the Battle of Endor. Now, we know, reading the Aftermath books, and it's even referenced in The Mandalorian, the Operation Cinder, the war didn't end for another year. It didn't end until this battle called the Battle of Jakku. But this is the same choice as saying, like, World War II ended with or not ended. Yeah, I guess they say ended, but it ended with the Battle of Stalingrad, when it actually ended with VE Day, but the Battle of Stalingrad was the turning point. Endor was the turning point. They knew that the Empire was on the run. They knew it was a matter of time before they defeated them. There's not really a sense of we're going to lose after Endor. There's only a sense of how long is this conflict going to drag on.
Yeah,
that's explored in so many books.
Yeah, the ultimate evil's gone and rallies the whole rest of the galaxy. Yada, 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 right?
Well, and it just wouldn't have been worth it to say, at the Battle of Jakku, and then a bunch of people scratch their heads and be like, what does that mean? Like, if you're a hardcore Star Wars fan, you know that it was at the Battle of Jakku, but saying the Battle of Endor is perfect for general audiences.
Exactly right.
And then, so Sabine shares that Ahsoka's taking her on as an apprentice, and Ezra has the same reaction as Huyang, and he goes, "You? Why?" And it was super funny. And it's a natural reaction. Sabine's not force sensitive yet that we can tell, and so this was a worthy reaction on Ezra's part, and that was a good little back and forth. And Sabine still won't tell him what she did, and I'm happy that they haven't delved into that yet, because I want to see our characters a little jovial and happy before that other shoe drops.
I want to take just a slight step back about the Emperor's dead. That's what some people say. If you're out there thinking that like the sequels are going to get retconned somehow, you're wrong. It's not happening.
Not going to happen. No, you're absolutely
and like this is another tick of evidence here. All the other rest of the evidence is out there. You can want it and hope for it as much as you want, but keep hoping. You're not going to happen.
That's delusional. No, I mean, whatever you think of the sequels, they're not our favorite Star Wars movies, but they happened, and they have good elements that they brought to Star Wars. And Dave was on set for The Last Jedi. Rian Johnson is the one who taught Dave how to do live-action Star Wars. Dave was there the whole time watching Rian Johnson work, and The Last Jedi was my least favorite episode, but I'm grateful that Rian Johnson taught him how to direct live action, because if he hadn't, we weren't going to get Ahsoka, and we weren't going to get Dave's future movie. And so that just is what it is. And you just have to roll with the punches and talk about the Star Wars that you love.
Exactly right.
So the Great Mothers come in to talk to Thrawn. They got a map of the planet and the rings, and they call him my lord. And I'm really curious, why do you think the Dathomiri are so deferential to Thrawn? I mean, they've got the power. This is their planet. Thrawn's got a massive Star Destroyer, and maybe he could wipe them out, because there's only 3 of them from what we can tell. But they've got some mysticism about them that we've never really seen Dathomiri witches be this deferential to somebody before.
And from the witch's perspective, he's an interloper. He showed up out of the blue, needing help, and has presumably lived on their planet for this amount of time, and had to have started out on some level subservient to them, right? But at this point, what I really think it is he is going to be the deliverance of salvation for them for whatever reason it is, right?
So do you think they're actually bought into this Thrawn as a messianic figure, kind of like those Night Troopers seem to be, or do you think it's an alliance of that it's an alliance only of convenience, and that they're going to betray him eventually?
Honestly, the Night Sisters, especially with the arrival of Morgan Elsbeth, being that the news that she would deliver that, hey, we've been wiped out, and it's been quite a while. I'm the only one left, and there's rumors of other ones here and there. This girl named Marin bouncing around, and I don't even know what her allegiance is, but surely it's almost both. I mean, we can, like, gosh, what a rabbit hole. As surely Thrawn has sold some sort of version of the truth to these Night Sisters that, hey, this galaxy, you can show up and do whatever you want. You can reclaim your power and independence at this other galaxy because they just roll over at anything.
Well, and, we know that the Emperor that Thrawn used to serve is the one that wiped out the Dathomiri, and they're also familiar with. They know that that's the case. I mean, Marin has to be told that, but when she's told that, she's aware. And a person of Elsbeth's status would know that the Empire is the one who came in and rolled through. Well, obviously, it was the Separatists, but it was the Emperor who ordered this.
Well, and think about Elsbeth. She's been alone, as far as we know, for this whole time, and she gets 3 mothers that she hadn't had in how long? A decade or more?
And we still have a lot of question marks around Elsbeth's character. How did she get that money connected on Corellia? How did she get so high up in the Empire? What was her role in the Empire? We got a lot of questions.
These are all details that we want to know.
Yep. So we then get the good Empire Strikes Back callback. Not the only Empire Strikes Back callback of the episode, but the first one I noticed between Luke and Leia when they're communing from Cloud City and the escaping Millennium Falcon. When Luke is calling out to Leia at the bottom of Cloud City, you get Ahsoka calling out to Sabine. And there's obviously something here. Sabine has some level of Force sensitivity. I was a little curious about this because I'd always assumed that this bond that Luke and Leia had by being related was why they were able to communicate. Not that other Force users couldn't, but they were exceptionally weak in the Force at the time. I mean, they had a lot of potential, but Luke did not have a ton of training. He only had his training with Yoda and his training with Ben. And then Leia had no training. And so Ahsoka obviously has a mountain of training, and Sabine has no training. So maybe that's how that connection can get bridged.
Yeah, and it's really cool. You know, I was always kind of skeptical that does the Force even work in this whole other galaxy? I'm glad it does.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen that over and over already in this stuff, but these scenes, the callbacks are really good.
So we then have Ahsoka gives away her position, basically, by using the Force. The Dathomiri witches are immediately able to zero in on her location after that. And they the ring starts firing on Ahsoka, and the ships, the fighter, they push her out of the ring, then the fighters are deployed, chasing Ahsoka to the surface. After that, the Noti stop and turn around when they encounter Baylan and Shin on the horizon. They see them sitting on their howlers. Ezra asks who those folks are, and they're not friends of Sabine's. And so we get to Baylan and Shin, where Baylan tells Shin, contact Thrawn, kill Sabine and Ezra, and take your place among the coming Empire, because Baylan is parting ways with Shin, saying her ambition drives her in one direction.
This is the well of so many questions. What in the world is going on here?
You're absolutely right. Shin, she seems to be a lot more motivated by becoming a Jedi or a Force user, and whatever that is to her, we don't really know, because she obviously doesn't really know. She doesn't have a good grasp on the concept, and it causes conflict within her, and we see this later. I have a lot more to say about that. And Baylan says his path lies in another direction, and I kind of thought he was going to shore off her Padawan braid right there, that this is their parting ways. I thought she was going to ditch the Padawan braid. But this Baylan and Shin scene is the perfect time to bring on that super special guest that I talked about. We have got our friend Sai here. Sai is not only a Star Wars super fan, he is also the GM for our Patreon exclusive RPG live play podcast, The Wayward Wayfarers. If you haven't checked that out, you should head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/Star Wars Station. Sai's got a ton of insight. He's an Old Republic junkie, but he knows everything about all of the eras of Star Wars. He's a huge Clone Wars fan, loves Ahsoka, and so he's got quite a bit of insight for us here. So, Sai, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys both for having me. It's really much appreciated. Always good to be on with you fellas, and especially the RPG as well. But maybe my first time ever on a podcast, I think. I've been in a couple of things, but never the podcast. So thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah,
glad to have you here.
We're super excited to have you on. So I've got a question for both of you guys to get us rolling on some of this speculation, because there's just a lot to talk about right here. And the question is, what are Baylan's motivations? Because he's been a mystery the entire show, and I know that we've all got quite a few theories floating out there.
You as the guest get to go first.
So this whole show, like you were saying, Baylan has kept his hand very close to his chest. He has not really been shown his cards. We've got a few things, and Carter, you and I talked a bit last week just in person, and I made some relations to how I felt about, he's after something bigger, and I really do believe that. I think he is chasing something larger. I really don't know what. I have a theory about Baylan himself. I think he's really starting to achieve some of the things he was after, though. I think Baylan, in part, is an explorer, and I think this is actually something that he genuinely wants. And it's very interesting seeing also, like you brought the Padawan braid up earlier, Baylan is not training Shin as a Sith. I think we can pretty much confirm that.
I agree.
Just by the fact that she has a Padawan braid in. So it's very interesting to see the direction that both those characters have taken. And I do want to get into it, but I want to let Colin answer as well on this question.
Yeah, so, gosh, there's so much to this scene, right? The sentence he delivers just as she's about to trot off on the howler is, he says, one more final lesson. Impatience for victory will guarantee defeat. So this is, I don't want to believe this, right? Personally, I want them to, I don't know what, but I want them to be together and do cool things, whatever that means. And so what this is her final test. And it's not necessarily for her to go and accomplish that mission. It's to gain experience and knowledge, right, for whatever is in her heart's desire. So what was the original question?
The original question for you was, what are Baylan's motivations?
Oh, gosh, yeah. So we've seen now that Baylan can read minds. And what he's saying this last episode, there's something greater going on here, right?
Something calls to him. Something greater calls to him.
I know there's been a lot of speculation on Twitter and the internet about this stuff. I've ignored all of that because so many people go down so many rabbit holes. And Filoni, surely with this bespoke character that he's made, is going to do something unique and really cool. If I had to bet some money on this, I think he can see the future in such a slight way that he knows that this is the end of the line for him. And he's shepherding off his Padawan, for lack of a better term. Sure, that's some other thing for his little cast, right? But he's sending her off into the world in a sense, and the end of his line is to face or grow to a greater a greater ambition to what he has been so far.
Okay. So I like both that input, but you both mentioned the something calls to me line, and so I do want to get into it a little bit. There's a couple of theories, like you said, floating around. The two that I hear the most about are the Mortis gods, the sun specifically. If you're unfamiliar with that, there's a 3-episode arc in the Clone Wars that details these extremely powerful Force beings that represent different aspects of the Force. But there's another theory floating around that we can't take credit for. There's an eagle-eyed Star Wars fan online that caught this, that as Baylan and Shin ride out of the Dathomiri Witch Temple last episode, there is Sith writing called Iskatat over the doorway that references Kujet. And Kujet is a character introduced in the Jedi Fallen Order video games as one of the Zepho and one of the first dark side users in the history of the galaxy. And the Dathomiri, what the writing on it is deferential to Kujet. It says, "May his reign last forever," yada, yada, yada. And so, is it Mortis gods that are calling to him? Is it Kujet that might be calling to him? Is it something totally different?
It's an ancient power, I'll say that. Whatever is in this galaxy, my theory from last week's episode was that the resources from this galaxy have been consumed, and if it's some sort of celestial, to make a Marvel reference, some sort of celestial entity, like maybe he's the Silver Surfer, the next Silver Surfer.
Right.
I felt bad for saying that. It's Star Wars. They just slapped me on the wrist for that one, but maybe there's some greater entity for sure, and it's an original thought. It's not going to. Zepho's fine, sure, but whatever that other rumor was, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that's really cool. I think that's definitely intentionally put there from whoever caught that. Great eyes, too.
Yeah, for real.
But obviously an intentional thing. Baylan himself does not strike me as a character going after power for power's sake. He almost seems at some points indifferent to it, just in the way he speaks. I mean, he's obviously powerful, like you were saying. He can read people's minds. Pretty new Force power. Have we ever seen that before? At one point, maybe?
Yeah, some dark side users can kind of peel into your mind and unlock some information, and Baylan's is a lot more passive than that, because when the dark side users do it, it usually hurts the individual, maybe makes them go insane, and Baylan's is a lot more predictive. He's a lot easier to just... He gets an emotional read on people and is able to take advantage of that.
He expressly uses details against Sabine to manipulate her into going with him.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he does.
And with that, of course, we know Force users have precognition, but I think that being able to see into people's minds, Baylan is very casual. Pretty much all the time, I feel like. He's never overly intense, and I think even in combat, he's very casual. We see in some of his fights with Ahsoka, it's almost like he's reading the moves before they're there.
He's a relaxed guy.
Well,
yes.
Very slight contradiction is in the first scenes of the first episode, he force chokes and massacres a whole ship with Shin Hati.
Mm-hmm.
True.
That's true.
He does do that.
But he does it elegantly, almost Count Dooku-esque, and he does it calmly. Shin, we see her in a rage, in a Sith-like rage.
Yes.
That's not Baylan. Baylan is every action, everything he does feels reluctant.
Very
And
melodic.
to your point about him not seeking power, I would say whatever's calling to him is a deception, is my guess. Is that it's similar to Kylo Ren being called by the mask of Darth Vader, thinking he's hearing Anakin's voice, thinking he's hearing Vader's voice, when actually it's Palpatine masquerading as that. I would say that, obviously this isn't Palpatine calling to him, that's not my claim, but my claim is that whoever's calling to him is doing the same thing. Baylan thinks that he's being called by some great power that is going to benefit him or is going to be able to get whatever his motivations are, but that's actually not the case. They just need Baylan to open the door or whatever it is that needs to happen.
I like the thought process behind that, too. That is interesting.
So I've got a couple more things to talk to you guys about Baylan. One more floating around the internet is the list. Are you either of y'all familiar with Baylan's list?
I'm not.
Okay.
Oh, on the wrist. Yes.
So yes, on his gauntlet on CTOS, you can see written in Arabesh, he has the names Luke, Leia, Han, Chewie, R2-D2, C-3PO, and Ben. And so my question is this current or past? So one, is the Ben Solo or is it Ben Kenobi? And then if it's the old one, it's all the Death Star, all the people associated with the Death Star. Is he after them now? Or was he a mercenary that we didn't see on screen during the original trilogy? Very, very, very similar to Mara Jade from the Heir to the Empire trilogy, where they say she was on Jabba the Hutt's sail barge, hired to kill Luke Skywalker, was not able to do it. And it was Baylan. Is Baylan one side of the Mara Jade coin? And I'll bring the other side in way later in the Always in Motion segment.
I'll say I don't think so. I don't see it that way. The first point you brought up, what was that one again? Could you?
The first one is that he's after these people now. It was either he was after him in the past or he's currently after them. And if he's presently after them, then the Ben has to be Ben Solo and not Ben Kenobi.
So both of those are interesting things. I don't get the feeling that he is after them now, but I don't see a point that would be incorporated in the past either if he wasn't after them in the past. But he doesn't give me the idea that he is currently hunting them. He seems like he is past that point, so to speak, even though we don't really know his thoughts on it. To me, as a character, for the character we've seen so far, that doesn't seem very like him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that's a fun concept. I hope it's true. I really do.
Which one?
Both. I don't know. Because he obviously wasn't successful as some sort of agent. Gosh, that is kind of deep. It didn't occur to me. I saw that rumor, and I didn't put much thought to it because it's an Easter egg. That's all it is.
You think so? But it's got to have some purpose, right?
I mean,
we'll have to get some kind of
Filoni
explanation.
will tell us in
an interview someday.
An interview somewhere.
Okay. And so finally, the last question I'll pose to you guys about Baylan before we move on is another theory floating around is, does Baylan seek to end the Force or the use of the Force? And I think this was a little bit more supported, and now that this episode's passed, it may not be, because his lines about Shin taking her new place, it sounds like she'll still be able to wield the Force in the future. And so if he were on this mission to exterminate the use of the Force, then that wouldn't be the case.
Yeah, I don't see him being after the extermination of the Force. And like I said at the beginning when I first got on here, he's kept his cards very close to his chest. And I think whatever we do find out is likely going to usurp everyone's expectations, to be honest with you. It could be something completely off the wall that nobody has guessed, which I think there's a real chance, especially with Dave Filoni, of that happening. And I'm just very excited to see this greater machination come to light, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I wonder how in the world we're going to discover all of this in one more episode of this Ahsoka season 2.
I know. There's just no room. We're going to have a lot more questions than answers by the end of the next episode, I'm sure.
And it, in a sense, it really stinks because, gosh, Baylan is such a cool character. He's one of the lowest hanging fruits of a character that I can cosplay. His costume would be hard to make, but everything else is right along. Like, I got the right facial hair. My hair's going to turn that color anyway. His lightsaber's cool. Man. So in the Force, gosh, that seems kind of far-fetched. I really think, based on the previous episode's dialogue, is that I think he was one of the ones that could see the oncoming fall of the Jedi Order. I thought a lot about this on the drive over here. Like, why did the Jedi Order fall? And what could they have done? Like, if you go back in time and have them make other decisions, and I'm not saying I'm right, and it's probably kind of basic, but they should have chosen not to be generals. They should have said, we're peacekeepers, we're sitting this one out, go fight your war. We're not doing this, right? And who knows how that would have been. Of course, all of Palpatine's Palpatine's corrupt machinations, and that seems like a Jedi Order that Baylan Skoll would have been on board with. I think he could probably shoot through some sort of, if he's going around monitoring people, or if he has some sort of easier inclination for divination of the future, that he can see or be more perceptive to this downfall. And it's like, you know what? Yeah, I'm a general. I can see the writing on the wall. Deuces, I'm out. And I'm going to go be a hermit on, he lived on the opposite side of Dagobah for all we know, right? So he wants to, he even said that, what was it? The Jedi Order was tempting, but it happens again and again and again, right? The rise and the fall of the Jedi, right? There's a cycle. So his goal is to end that cycle. And I don't know how that would be. That's the cards close to the chest thing. And so that's what he wants to do, is in that cycle.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you're probably right. I think the ending the Force is a far-fetched one, but it was one worth mentioning. I'd seen it floating around a lot.
Cool theory for sure.
Yeah,
very
certainly.
entertaining.
I mean, use definitely has use in the future for a different bad guy. If Baylan wasn't the one after it, let's get somebody else who's after that someday.
So that reminds me of like Avatar: The Last Airbender fans.
Oh yeah,
they don't want anybody to have bending anymore.
Right.
So we're going to eliminate it.
So the last thing about this scene is Shin is not happy about being abandoned. She gives him a dirty look. She looks like she feels betrayed, like her master's just leaving. And it's out of nowhere. I mean, it comes out of left field for the audience. It certainly comes out of left field for her. And she's going to be lost now. And we see that later down the line, just in this episode, how kind of lost she already is.
I was surprised to hear it for sure. And one of those things, it goes to show, like I said earlier, they're obviously not Sith, because that's not how those relationships typically end. Baylan is now going in a whole different direction, while he knows Shin wants to go and take her place in the Empire. And it really seems like, once you look at it, he's doing this out of courtesy.
Right.
Like, this is what you are meant to do. You're going to be better off for doing this than staying with me and doing whatever I'm going to do. And I don't see Baylan having plans to return to the Star Wars universe from the world between worlds. And I said earlier, I think to an extent he's an explorer.
From the world,
it's like
so
he's
you think
hunting
he's pursuing
something.
the world between worlds?
Yeah,
is that what you're saying?
To an extent, yes. I think he wants to branch out, maybe hunt different universes, through the different galaxies, galaxies, things like that. And I don't know how all that exploration is going to take place, if it's going to be as well as a Force journey, as well as a physical journey. But most of the transportation is going to be leaving here soon in the next episode, so I don't know what exactly Baylan's going to do.
Yeah.
But I think it does involve the world between worlds. I wouldn't be surprised if it involved the Great Mothers either. I think he might have some kind of idea for that. It just seems, I don't know, it's strange. It seems like he is becoming more and more content, yet he's still striving for that end goal. Right, but it seems like he really is getting closer. He speaks like he's closing in on something.
Yeah, and I hope we'll find out next episode, but I don't think his character's over, so we're going to have to see where that leads. So Thrawn gets the message from Shin that she's found Ezra and Sabine, so he dispatches 2 Kanan killer gunships. And then they have a wicked chase fight scene. Disney released this online a couple hours before the episode just to kind of build some hype. It had some good levity. It had the Noti, trying to fight back, and they couldn't. They used their little slingshot to no avail. And
throwing pots and pans.
I gotta say that it's definitely, I was wrong on they're gonna make some kind of Ewok style stand. These guys are
they're defensive.
Food. They're just food. And so nothing there. They're piloting their trailer houses though, and they're smashing them into each other, trying to kill some of those raiders.
Cute little fellas though.
Oh, they're adorable. They're so adorable. Their houses are shells. They're shellception little guys. They are Russian nesting doll people. Like they are a Russian nesting doll society. But this chase scene was really good. There's just not a whole lot to talk about. Chase scenes are iconic in Star Wars, but this one didn't really bring anything that I thought was worth mentioning.
The only thing I want to mention on this was it kind of caught me off guard. It seems strange to me, but in just, I guess, the way they do things now, when Sabine was shooting at the pursuers, she was aiming only at the small, little, slender, vertical target of the pursuer, not at this massive horse-like thing that would easily be taken out.
She's made friends with hers. She doesn't want to kill one of them.
She's got a bleeding heart.
buddies.
It's okay. I'm not opposed to it, but she's missing these guys quite a lot and missing the opportunity at these easy shots. That's all I want to say.
Right. So we see Ahsoka flying down in, and her and Huyang are working out a maneuver they've done before that Huyang
against
hates.
the useless fighters.
And Ahsoka bails and confronts Baylan on the ground.
This was a hot combat drop. So cool to see this happen.
Yeah, it was.
Way
She slides down. It was really neat. Ahsoka, the queen of these hard landings. I mean, the most famous being in the Siege of Mandalore. She drops from atmosphere. So this one wasn't as cool as that one, but it was cool. And then Baylan says he can't allow her to interfere. And so, maybe part of his plan is he does need Thrawn to return to the galaxy, because I can't see Ahsoka interfering with whatever Baylan's plan is, because she doesn't know. One, she doesn't know what his plan is. Two, I don't even think she's aware that he has an alternative plan to Thrawn, because that's not been made clear to anybody other than Shin. And it just was made clear to Shin. I mean, we as the audience are in on it, but it's not been made clear to Ahsoka that he's just not some Thrawn goon.
Yeah, I took this as this was some sort of rite of passage for Shin Hati, and of course he wants to complete the mission, and for Ezra and Sabine to die. So Ahsoka can't interfere with that.
Anything, Dan? Okay, cool. So we have next the scene that cuts to the Raiders surrounding Sabine and Ezra. Sabine tries to give Ezra his lightsaber.
Oh my god!
And I love the fact that Ezra refuses to take the lightsaber. Being a Jedi without a lightsaber is super cool. Like, it's a really unique path. And I think that he's obviously spent a lot of time becoming exceptionally powerful in the Force, and I'm pleased that this was the path he chose.
Oh my gosh! What is the martial art? The Jedi the Star Wars martial art.
The forms.
Terras Kasi.
You're
talking about Terras Kasi.
This is. It's not Terras Kasi, I don't think, but it's like some sort of Force-enhanced martial art. And this was so beyond cool. I mean, because it fits the mold exactly of exiled on this planet or castaway on this planet, and you don't have a lightsaber, can't make a lightsaber, or doesn't even want to, was Ezra even really comfortable with the lightsaber at all to begin with? Of course, every Jedi wants one. They want to use one, but it always seemed like to me, like for 1 minute, he integrated a blaster into his lightsaber, right?
Yeah, but by season 4, I think he was plenty comfortable.
So, well, regardless, he doesn't have it at this point, and him being like, this was another thing online that I wish we'd have caught. His little armor under his suit. Did you read this one?
Yeah, but that's all speculation, and I don't like that speculation. I thought it was bad. I didn't like it. But, I mean, you obviously did, so let our listeners know.
And I think it fits with what the narrative of the story is he's out on this planet, and obviously Thrawn's pursuing him. And what did Thrawn say? There's marauders and bandits in Enoch. And like, oh, yeah, he's out there if he's still alive. Obviously, Ezra's been a thorn in the side, and so his little chainmail under his jacket is... Stormtrooper dog tags.
Is speculated to be
Stormtrooper dog tags.
Yes.
I
haven't heard that. That's wicked.
So it is. I mean, think of what the implication of with no lightsaber running around with these hyper defensive little notey things are, and what I mean, because certainly they're, Thrawn's over here, Ezra's over here trying to hoping somebody shows up. And it's like, we need supplies, and they have them. It just becomes this like, we're going to steal them, and got to be all these encounters over the years that were just a huge thorn in Thrawn's side, knocking these guys out, reducing his effectiveness in his forces.
Yeah, and they've definitely come to blows, Thrawn and Ezra, I'm sure, at some point while they've been on this planet. Enough to get... that many dog tags from stormtroopers? I don't know.
I push back on the idea because it's not the Jedi way.
It's not.
It's being
trained by
attached.
Kanan.
It's proud. It's too proud to do something like that. I don't think that's a Jedi move. It's a little too edgy for my taste for that to be.
Plus, Ezra's pretty easygoing too.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, I don't see him, especially doing something like such as
except
taking
that he
trophies.
was an oppressed little kid on Lothal being taken advantage of, and his parents were killed, and all these other things. He'd wear that stuff as a badge of pride, knowing that he's wearing them against Thrawn, his arch nemesis.
But that's against the Jedi way. That's not what a Jedi would do.
He's a Boken Jedi.
Plus with, sorry, don't mean to interrupt you, but plus with him not taking the lightsaber, I'm with you guys. I think it makes perfect sense, especially for me, because he hasn't wielded one in a decade. You know, practicing with sticks isn't the same.
Yeah, he would probably be arguably less effective with the lightsaber.
Yeah, yeah.
And so he says to Sabine it's the end of the conversation before the fight begins. He says, "No, the Force is my ally. That's all I need." And this mirrors Yoda's line, "For my ally is the Force," and a powerful ally it is. And what mirrors Yoda even more in this is that back in 1980, after The Empire Strikes Back came out, we saw Yoda on screen. I didn't see Yoda. I was negative 18. But Star Wars fans saw Yoda, and he didn't have a lightsaber. Then he didn't have a lightsaber in Return of the Jedi. And then this is reinforced further when The Phantom Menace comes out, and he doesn't have a lightsaber. And Yoda's lightsaber doesn't show up until Attack of the Clones. And so it was assumed by many, many people, it was basically the general assumption from what I understand, was that Yoda didn't have a lightsaber because he was so exceptionally powerful in the Force, he didn't need one. And so this is kind of hearkening back to that already with Ezra and giving up on the lightsaber part, because as he says, "No, the Force is my ally, and that's all I need." And I thought that was super complimentary.
Very, very insightful.
And obviously, as we know, he already ran into Yoda once in Rebels. He wouldn't have any knowledge about Yoda having a lightsaber or anything like that, but I really enjoyed that. And I will say, despite how much I like the fact that he doesn't have a lightsaber, I am sure they will give him one eventually, strictly for the toy value.
Yes.
Like, it's just, Star Wars is built around merchandise, and so that's going to happen eventually. And the last thing I'll say about Ezra not using a lightsaber is this is some deep, deep lore right here. You got to dig deep to see this. Ezra not using a lightsaber finds its roots in Forces of Destiny, which is a female-centric animated web series that was a couple minutes long, following the female characters of Star Wars. The stories in them are canon. One of the stories is Hera and Han Solo team up after the Battle of Endor to destroy an Imperial bunker. But one of the stories is about Ahsoka teaching Ezra during Rebels some Jedi stuff. And one of the things she teaches him is how to fight without a lightsaber. So we see this come full circle with Ahsoka having taught him how to do it in general at all in the first place.
Very deep. That's so cool.
Super cool thing there. And it's a callback, especially with Ahsoka teaching him how to fight without a lightsaber, because it was drilled into Ahsoka's head. We see it, tens of times in the Clone Wars. Your lightsaber is your life. Do not lose it. Always fighting with a lightsaber. So I think that's cool that we get to see her on the flip side of that coin, teaching Ezra how to fight without one.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I know I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record, but the next scene we see Ahsoka fighting Ben. We see Ahsoka fighting Baylan, and it looks really good, and it looks very samurai. Once again, I say this about every one of their fights, but the reason it looks so samurai right now is because of the setting and the location. The rocky plains of Peridia are the perfect location for one of those old-style homage samurai duels.
Exactly right.
Very pretty.
The way she's holding everything. Oh, the dialogue even.
So we then cut back to Ezra and Sabine fighting. Shin has arrived. Do you have something to say?
She's using two lightsabers this time. It's another Ahsoka the White thing.
Right. So we see Shin arrive and begin fighting Ezra and Sabine. Ezra and Sabine are making a really good team. But Ezra smooth dodges Shin, and then he stops her lightsaber with the Force.
Super cool.
That's obviously Rise of Skywalker moves right there. We see Ben and Rey both doing this in the Rise of Skywalker. But Ezra's whole style here, fighting without a lightsaber, but especially stopping the lightsaber with the Force, had like a light bulb go off in my head because of a line that Kanan gives him in Season 1 of Rebels, where Kanan says, "Having a laser sword doesn't make you a Jedi." And apparently Ezra took this lesson completely to heart. And I think that Shin is slowly realizing that also. She's not a Jedi. She's a Force user, and she's not particularly that good of one. And I think she's learning that. Up till now, her and Baylan may have been the only two Force users she'd ever even encountered. And now she's really understanding there's a knowledge gap, not just on what a Jedi is or what the Order is or what they are, but just even on her skill. She's nowhere near where she thought she was.
Especially after encountering Sabine and her being a pushover 2 other times.
Right.
Yeah. With Shin too, goes back that she hasn't been trained in really either side of the Force super hard. Like, yes, we see them, of course, they're using the dark side, but not to an extent that we see other dark side users.
Yeah, not like a Sith.
It's not.
You're absolutely right.
It's not pushed to that, and we know that the sides of the Force are very distinct in how power works. Very dark side users when they are fully 100% dark side, very powerful. Yoda, people that are 100% light side, very powerful. When you try and start cutting that gap, I think it's going to cut down on your power because you have to commit one way or the other.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, we see her using the dark side, obviously, but not a ton. I mean, she kills a bunch of people, but with a lightsaber. I think all I can really remember her using a dark side power is choking Sabine on CTOS. Mm-hmm. And so that was interesting. But her fighting style is so filled with rage. There's no way she's not a dark side.
Oh, yes, absolutely a dark side user. It's interesting.
Oh, I agree
how
with
she's
you.
been trained.
I absolutely agree.
I have only one small quibble with these scenes, and I want to chalk it up to me being a ninny. But with this whole band of marauders that are mounted, and Shin Hati is mounted against a whole plethora of hiding your shell, totally ineffective little guys, and one long lost Jedi and one half-armed, helmetless Mandalorian. Why would you dismount? Why would you get off of your, what were these things called? Howler. Why would you get off your howler? You're in a superior position. You could trot by and decapitate anybody you wanted with your lightsaber, and you would be very hard pressed to dismount. Ezra could. He could dismount him real easy. And you would, a competent force would never dismount here. They're a superior fighting force, especially if they hunker down and these 2 little goofballs get out. You just sit back and shoot them. What's the deal here?
Right.
So again, that's me being a ninny, but don't dismount if you're mounted. Please.
Well, I'll give my nitpick on this scene too. Ezra getting bodied by Shin. It was a little goofy. He's like, the Force is my ally. He is piecing up all these people. Runs at her, wham, unconscious onto the RV.
He's just like, take her out. He's like, alrighty.
Right.
But we have long-standing tradition of Jedi giving ridiculous lines right before getting bodied because this line is the equivalent of Chancellor Palpatine, Sith Lords are our speciality, and then immediately getting a platform dropped on your legs.
Well, if we're going over our nitpicks of this scene in particular, Colin, you just mentioned it. Helmetless Mandalorian, Sabine fighting without the helmet. Why?
Oh, and
got knocked off.
The wonderful disappearing helmet. Did it get knocked off?
No, she didn't
I
start
didn't
with it
see
all.
this whole
it got
episode.
knocked off on CTOS. Because Hu Yang's sitting there. It got knocked off in the initial fight with
I thought you meant it got knocked off in this fight. You're right.
Yeah,
it did. Hu Yang and Ahsoka have the helmet.
And I said it wrong.
Okay.
It's not Hinshati. It's Shin Hati. Sorry.
Forgive me then, because I was watching that scene like, why would Sabine not wear her helmet in this situation?
and
I must have missed
remember
that.
Hu Yang, he had to walk from the ship to that precipice and is sitting there staring at it, looking forlorn at the helmet.
I do remember that now.
Absolutely right.
I do remember that. Yep.
It's under Hera's care at the moment.
So I mentioned this on Rapid Reactions that I love when Star Wars is a battle on multiple fronts. Just like Return of the Jedi, we got 3 battles going on. Just like The Phantom Menace, we got 4 going on. Here we've got Hu Yang in the air, Ahsoka fighting Baylan. We got Ezra and Sabine on the ground also. And this scene, the reason I think about it this way is because seeing Hu Yang come in and drop the flares for Ahsoka right as soon as he needed to kind of helped me visualize what I was talking about. On my rewatch after the Rapid Reactions, it's like I need to find some evidence on what I'm talking about, and that was really kind of reinforcing that. After Ahsoka ditches Baylan on his howler, he looks off, but he looks off like he's still won, like he's going to get what he wants. And he looks resigned about what he has to do, just like he looks resigned about everything. Like he looks like he regrets everything he's doing, and every movement of his body is like, I regret what I'm doing. I regret doing this, but he's just doing it anyway. And that scene was no different.
I'll add to this in a moment.
Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
No.
He wants to always in motion, right?
No.
Oh, you just have a point in a second.
When Shin Hati's scene, I got this is going to coalesce into a thought for me. So.
Okay, it's the wonderful peak that we're going to get to here.
Yes.
I have an idea about this as well. So very, very interesting.
So we get the Kanan killer gunships. They drop out and they unload all their night troopers, and they drop off a tiny little aerial drone. And when I saw it, I was wondering what it was. And we get the explanation just a little bit later. But then we cut to see Thrawn and Elsbeth for a moment looking at this tactical battle map. It's like that game in Pyloon's Saloon and Jedi Survivor. But they're looking at this map. And this is where Thrawn's tactical prowess is displayed in a clever way. Because I was wondering, how do you show Thrawn as a competent leader, as a competent tactician, without putting him in a naval engagement? Because that's where, even in real-world history, usually that's where you see these great tacticians are on boats and the Battle of Trafalgar and yada, yada, yada. But Thrawn here... He is obviously first great as an admiral, but this is a land battle, and so how are they going to display it? Well, this TAC map really redeemed what I was talking about earlier felt like Thrawn was a little bit of a pseudo-intellectual in his comments there. This reinforces how fearsome and how intelligent of a villain he is for general audiences.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. That the whole thing, those old gunships landing, the disembarking, and what he gives an order of some sort of circle them somehow. I forget exactly what it was. And exactly, you hit the nail on the head.
One thing I want to touch on too is those gunships in particular. The look of them, the feel of them. We've seen them before.
Yeah, they're all over Rebels. They're on Andor, I'm pretty sure.
In Rebels. I really like these ships, especially with Thrawn, because they look... To an extent, they look cobbled together. They look like ties that have been welded together in different ways to me. And the reason I think that's interesting is because of the name of Thrawn's ship, the Chimera. And I really like that call. Do we see them? Do we see these types of ships with people other than Thrawn?
Oh, yeah. They're in the Bad Batch. They're used by other Imperial commanders and rebels. They're in the games. They're
I just don't recall seeing them very often other than him.
When the Empire's converting from the Republic into the Empire, these ships are like one of the first things that they changed. Like they changed from the iconic LAAT gunships in the Clone Wars to these pretty early on. And, they slowly, like they phase in stormtroopers, they phase in walkers. Well, this is one of the ones where it's like, pretty sure Bad Batch Season 1 they start using these. Almost to the point where it's like, maybe these were being developed by the Republic in the Clone Wars. They're so ready to be used.
It's just another brand, and they win the contract versus whoever made the LAAT.
So we move on, and we see our heroes surrounded by the Night Troopers, and Shin says to kill them. And then we get the most Ezra Bridger moment that we need.
Yes,
I was so happy
we do.
Because he's still funny, he's still goofy. Iman Esfandi is he's carrying the lion's share of the acting in all of these scenes because of how well he has embraced the character of Ezra. I thought that the performances in this episode were specifically some of the best from everybody. Like what I said, I was really jiving with Winstead at the beginning. Ahsoka, now that she's happier, I'm really digging Rosario. But we have the perfect live-action casting of Ezra on screen. I mean, it is seamless, flawless. You could take us as prisoners. Like, this is just the writing. Dave gets his characters, and I was happy to see this guy transferred from animation into live action.
Yeah, exactly right here. And gosh, I really want. I'm going to mispronounce his name. How do you say it?
Iman Esfandi.
Esfandi, right? I wonder what all he did to prep for this role. You suppose he watched all the Rebels episodes
over and over and over? He had to have.
Seems like it with his mannerisms.
I was very impressed. I thought he did a great job, and I'm really excited to see him continue in the role. I also think that this scene serves to prove. So they're all surrounded. Ahsoka then makes it back. She knocks down and kills some night troopers, and then the gang disperses and they start the fight again. And I think this proves that the night troopers are not undead, as I had posited last episode, as well as I've seen all over online. Because when they're killed, there's no magic released. There's nothing.
Yeah, all they do is look cool. They
exactly.
Just fall over dead.
They fall like a dead body. Well, we then get to see Thrawn looking at a attack map again, and he goes, "This is almost like the Jedi Order of old." And then he learns that Baylan is absent, and given Baylan's absence, Thrawn says that these losses are acceptable.
Yeah, he looked kind of pissed to me that he thought Baylan was going to go there and clean up.
Oh yeah. It did. It caught him by surprise. Thrawn just does not like to be surprised. That's like his iconic thing is he hates being surprised.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what the reconciliation of this is.
I totally agree. We also see that Thrawn is always one step ahead. And because Elspeth is saying this isn't a win, what I see is us losing, and she is just the Palian of the moment right now. So
Exactly
in the
right.
Heir to the Empire trilogy, Gilead Palin only exists basically so Thrawn can explain. So he can just be like, you see, Watson. I mean, it's the exact same thing. And so she exists for the same reason, but you can tell she doesn't really like it. Every time Thrawn talks down to her, she's got like this nasty look in her eye. And so I think this is gonna cause the rub with the Great Mothers. I just think as soon as we get to the new galaxy, these two factions are gonna split. The Great Mothers are using Thrawn, Thrawn's using them, and they are not going to be allies in the regular Star Wars galaxy.
I delivered your stuff. I'm going to go find the real Palian. Deuces, I'm out.
Right. So we then see that Thrawn says, "Oh no, we're winning," because his ship is almost loaded full of the mysterious cargo that we don't know what it is. Still don't think we'll know. I saw an interesting theory, something maybe similar to the Yisselmari, but you don't really need that because there are not very many Jedi left. But we'll see if that's the case or not.
Boy, that would be a good way to introduce those things from another galaxy. That'd be something.
It would. It would make a whole lot of sense on why they were never used before. It would be very helpful. And then they're all destroyed, and that's why they're not in the sequels.
I'm sorry,
or
you can't
anything
have
else.
Isla Marley without Talon Card, so whatever.
Right.
I got a little idea about what the cargo might. be. I don't know if you want me to wait for the next segment or if you want to hear.
Go ahead. You're a guest. I say you say it.
This is kind of off the wall. This is something that would be mixing. I'd be very surprised if it happens, but I think it might be interesting. Eggs.
Eggs for what?
You know what? We all know what. Yuzang Vong.
Oh, man. I see. This is what it was posed that are the Vong going to show up? And I think now that there is a new galaxy, yes, the Vong will eventually show up. I don't think in the Ahsoka series. I think they've got to ease us into that.
Like I said, kind of a wild out there one, but...
Yeah. No, I get it. I understand.
He needs an army. He doesn't currently have an army, and Thrawn leading a bunch of Yuzang Vong... kind of a scary thought.
These are, Schrodinger's cat, Thrawn's eggs, Thrawn's boxes. We don't know what's in
no
this.
clue.
It can be anything right now. There's been absolutely there's no hints whatsoever on them, aside from the fact they are from this galaxy. And that is the only hint that we have at all that what's in them. And the size, I guess, of the boxes. So we then learn Thrawn recalls all the night troopers, says, get back to the base. We see the little camera thing, and now we learn that little camera is what was displaying that TAC map. Again, just a cool idea for Thrawn to be able to show off how good of a tactician he is.
There's only like 5 to 10 troopers who left, too. So you talk about being bodied between Ezra, Ahsoka, and Sabine. These guys got... Sabine really delivered here. She didn't have much to say, but she's using all these Mandalorian tricks against Shin with the flamer and shooting a missile into 3 of these guys. These guys got wrecked.
I loved the Ezra Force slide, her with the flamethrower. It's just, they're so comfortable working together, even after all this time apart. It was a really good testament to their relationship. So the night troopers are recalled, and they leave Shin standing there, perplexed and very visibly a little scared. She's pretty shaken. She's in front of these 2.5 Jedi, and they're sitting there, and Ahsoka says, lay down your weapon, surrender your weapon, and then she goes, I can help you. And you can see the gears turning in Shin's mind. She's terrified, and this is what I was saying earlier, the other side of the Mara Jade coin. I really think we've got the other side of Mara Jade on our hands, in that Shin Hati will probably turn to the light side at some point in her Star Wars character existence.
Oh my gosh, there's so much potential here. She is a really standout actress in this whole show. People online love her for various reasons, and she really is. Just everything she's doing in this episode or in this series delivers. As much as I want to see more Baylan, and as much as I want to see all the other characters, I want to see way more of Shin Hati. And the Mara Jade is almost the best analog. Angry at the start, redemption going forward. Very cool.
Shin is great. Really love her character as well. I was a little surprised. I thought she was going to take them up on that offer. And my reasoning behind that is the quote that Baylan's parting words to her: "Impatience for victory will certainly bring defeat." So I thought she might take that and go with them, under the guise of stab someone in the back as soon as I can. Yes, yeah, exactly. And to see her run off like that, she's still following those words. She's like, okay, have to be patient. I'm going to retreat, make some more time. But I really thought she was going to go with kind of the betrayal route. And I was a little happy to see that she didn't, to see that she, turned tail and ran, and she's still going to bide her time in that way.
So I really think in so much fiction, and this is a good thing, you'll have the hero face a trial and get smacked around, and then they scrape themselves up, recoup, and reattack whatever their mission is, and wholeheartedly succeed. We've kind of already seen it with Ahsoka in this, but I mean, name almost any fiction, and the hero will go through a period of being scraped along and get either a minor defeat or a major defeat, or there'll be a point where you think there's going to be like a point of no return because everything's on the line. Like the Mission Impossible movies are this way, every single one of them, right? And so I think, but for Baylan and for Shin somehow, they've both been served massive defeats in a sense. They didn't, Baylan didn't show it like we've already discussed, but Ahsoka rolled up in this really cool way. Baylan's even kind of arrogant in it. It's like, you can't defeat me. And she says, perhaps. And then the smoke comes along and she deuces out of there. Very cool scenes. But he has to, this was a surprise. He wasn't expecting her to show up. And so she does. And she's like able to juke him like that. Mm-hmm. Very cool. And so that's got to give him some pause. That was defeat. And then Shin after stabbing one of these persons, being told that, oh, well, this guy was trained in the wild, a.k.a. you don't got to worry about this guy, whatever. You go over there and steamroll these guys. And so she got a little bit arrogant and paid the price. So now they're both going to go back and lick their wounds, and something really, really cool is going to happen next episode.
And, well, we'll talk about this in Always in Motion, but I got a big question about what happens to Shin next episode. So, Shin's gone. Ahsoka smiles at Sabine. No mention of the betrayal. Sabine smiles back. I don't know if it's going to get brought up. I mean, Ezra will eventually learn. I don't think he's going to be that upset about it. I think he'll probably be more understanding now. Ahsoka's here. He thinks he's going home. I just don't know if they're going to dwell on that.
It's
like if the
be a
story
big deal
is going to
episode.
dwell on that. You
Yeah,
think so?
I think so.
No.
I'm with Colin. I do believe that.
Okay.
I think it's going to be kind of a not a super focal point, but it's going to definitely bring some tension to this group.
But so Ezra will then have to also be upset with Ahsoka for not telling him either. Unless Ahsoka just brings it up at the beginning of next episode, if she doesn't bring it up, Ezra's going to be upset with both of them, not just Sabine, because Ahsoka should have told him. I would assume would be his assumption. But they're all smiles. Sabine gives a half-ass excuse about, I thought you were dead. And Ahsoka doesn't even try to get into it. Ezra's like, what are you talking about? And they don't mention it. And I really love happy Ahsoka. She is just she's endearing. Rosario's doing a great job with her, all happy and pleased. And they just look happy to see each other. And the ending of this was really, really Phantom Menace-esque because it was a win for the good guys, unquestionably. It's da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and then, but the looming threat is there. Like, the tension. It's not, the throne room in A New Hope, which is a wrap-up, and it's not the end of Return of the Jedi, which is a celebration. It's a celebration, and they're happy, and it doesn't end on a cliffhanger like a normal penultimate episode would, but we all know in the back of our mind that the bad stuff's coming. The shoe's going to drop next episode.
Exactly right.
So I really, really enjoyed this episode. It wasn't my favorite episode. I still think episode 6 just was enchanting, to say the least, but this was in the top half of episodes for me. I'm digging, learning more and more about Peridia. I'm loving being reunited with Ezra, and that was a big, big bonus for this episode for me, was getting to see Ezra, getting to interact with him, and really see how much Iman Esfandi is shining in the role was all really rewarding.
Yeah, again, you had to peel back the layers to see what was special about this episode. You know, you're on this peak from the last one of so many reveals, and obviously they can't do that every week. You know, we said in the last episode, this one's my favorite, and the one previous to that, this was my favorite. Well, we can't say that about this one, right? But once you look back in this other stuff, you know, Ezra, not you want to use a lightsaber, the Force is my ally. What's up with Baylan? Hera at the start. And all this political stuff that we don't ever get. And when we do, it's so high quality and so it delivers so much. And so, again, you peel back the layers, and the reality is this is one of the better episodes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, you guys said it before, but I haven't said it. This is one of my favorite episodes, for sure. This is number 2 for me for Ahsoka. I thought it was great. I have a couple of qualms, but you can have qualms about anything. Everyone does to an extent. But I'd say this is number 2 for me, right behind 6.
Well, we wouldn't be good fans or good commenters if we weren't picking nits.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing. I mean, we are not, there's no glaring flaw in this show. There's no glaring flaw in these episodes. We're picking nits because that's what we do.
Yeah,
but,
man of combat. Who gives
Right. But yeah, no, I enjoyed it. I'm excited for the episode. It's like I said, it's not leaving us on a cliffhanger. There's not going to be some kind of buzz all week about... I mean, obviously, there's a lot of unanswered questions, but there's not going to be some kind of buzz about the cliffhanger, but I'm just as excited going into the next episode. And I don't want it to end, but I'm taking a really glass... Normally, when a Star Wars episode or Star Wars show reaches its halfway point, I'm not pessimistic about it, but I'm definitely like, dang, we only got 3 more episodes. Dang, we only got 2 more episodes. This show's been so rewarding and so filled with gems that... I'm taking a way more glass half full approach this time. And I'm like, we get another episode.
Yeah.
Like, it could have ended on that last episode. Would have been totally justified. Like, that would have been an ending for a season for me. And I'm so happy it's not because I'm so ready to keep diving in. And I'm very excited about the next one.
Yeah, I'm so ready to get to this Always in Motion. There's a lot to cover.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's hop right in right now to the Always in Motion.
Difficult to see. Always in motion is the future.
So true, Master Yoda. The future is always in motion, and Baylan Skoll can only see so many of the outcomes. So can the Great Mothers. But we're going to try, there's 3 of us, there's 3 Great Mothers. We're going to try to tease out the fate of the Star Wars galaxy right here. This is our segment where we predict what's going to happen next episode, what's going to happen next season, what's going to happen in the movie, what's going to happen in 30 years from now in Star Wars, and what are the repercussions of this show on that. So... we've got a lot to talk about. We've got all over the place. There's a lot of things to speculate about because this episode is leaving a lot of hanging questions, and they're not all getting answered next episode. So, guys, let's start out by giving our most likely speculation. Like, what's the one you think is, this is for sure going to happen? It's kind of on the nose.
Colin, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, Thrawn's going to go to the next galaxy, to the previous galaxy. That's the most low-hanging fruit. You don't introduce a character like Thrawn just for him to be in one season of Ahsoka. I think we've established that really well. They don't build this massive ring and go through all this trouble, but that is the tip of the top of all the questions. How are Ahsoka and all these other characters getting back? You know, is it going to be Purgle? Well, they're gone. So are they getting taken prisoner? And there's going to be, I believe, a massive fallout from Ezra when she finds out what Sabine did to get there. And I'm stemming that off of the cartoons. If he is a character that's going to jump off this animated screen into this, then maybe he has, I don't know. I think that's a stretch literally, but I don't know what else is going to happen here. I'm kind of reaching, right? But it's going to cause some sort of consternation that I don't even want to say it, where they all go back together. I don't know how, why would they? But they all got to get back there, and I don't know what the answer is. Because without all this stuff, it's got to make a good story. The only other thing I can think of is whatever Baylan's after, and there's no telling what that is. So, yeah.
So, I'm 100% with you on Thrawn. I think Thrawn 100% goes to, the Star Wars galaxy, for sure. One of mine that, me personally, I think is definitely going to happen. I think we're going to see out of these 4 characters, Baylan, Shin, Ahsoka, and Ezra Bridger, 2 of them will be staying on this planet. And I think it might be Shin and Ahsoka, or Baylan and Ezra.
2 any characters? Like, just 2 people are going to be stranded for some reason?
Yeah, but I think it will be, either Baylan and Ahsoka, Baylan or Ezra, or, the vice versa, Shin and those 2, or one of those and one of the other. That's what I think. I think it will be one of those 2 and one of the other. And I really think Shin might end up on this planet, but also, like I said earlier, I see Baylan staying here. So I think there's a good argument to be made that he might end up here through some kind of final battle. Him and Ahsoka get stuck on this world. Mm-hmm. That would not surprise me seeing that. I don't think everyone makes it back. Mm-hmm. I think Thrawn 100% does. I don't think our whole cast does. And I think I could see Ezra Bridger staying as well, as an act of they made it, they got back, and now, Ezra's been here for a decade. He's been here, almost not quite as long, about a third of his life?
9 to 11 years. Yeah. We don't really know, but it's around 9 or 11 years.
So for quite a long time, it wouldn't surprise me if Ezra did something in the matter of holding one of them there to let the others get away, or if Ahsoka held one of them there to let the others get away. But I don't think everyone makes it back to our galaxy far, far away.
Yeah. I'll echo what Colin said, since I asked for one thing and he gave 5. So he stole everything I had. Oh, yeah, Colin said the thing I was going to say. All right, I'll go to my second point. Oh, he said the other thing I was going to go to my third point. And then I just watched my list get blown up. And so I'll echo that, yeah, Thrawn's going to go to the new galaxy. Yeah, we're going to find out what Baylan's thing is. But I'll dig deeper into Baylan's thing. And this will get... So that's my general speculation. This is my wild speculation. Is that Baylan is going to encounter something that requires either another person or 2 other people, because we have the Lothal Jedi Temple. It required to be open 2 people. And Kanan always said that it's going to require a master and a Padawan. And Ezra said that again. He was like, we need 2 people. It's going to require a master and a Padawan. And so I think whatever Baylan's going to come across, he's going to regret ditching Shin. He can't get it done on his own. And it's going to require 2, but maybe 3. And the reason I say 3 is because it's here on Peridia, where the witches are in command, and it's their kingdom. And in this media, there are 3 great mothers, and in just media in general, when depicting witches, it takes 3 of them. There are always 3 witches. There are 3 fates in Greek mythology. There are 3 witches in Macbeth. And so you're going to require multiple Force users to get what Baylan wants done, and there will be a reason that the good guys have to help him. If that's not the case, then I believe that Baylan will get what he wanted done, and he will interrupt Ahsoka and Ezra and Sabine on their way back to Thrawn, and that will allow for Thrawn's escape. Inadvertently. That's not Baylan's goal. Not that he really cares if Thrawn escapes, but that will stop them. And maybe Shin becomes a part of them, because the speculation about Shin coming to Thrawn is, when she comes back riding that howler, what are they going to do? Are they going to be like, all right, we'll take you with us anyway? Why? She served her purpose. He was cool with leaving them there. And so she's got to have some kind of use for them. And so either Shin's going to have to pledge her loyalty to Thrawn, or she's going to get left behind.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And you mentioned it, the N2s, Kanan always talking to Ezra, as well as we see it's Malachor with Maul and Ezra to get into the temple. Yeah,
exactly, yes.
It's also N2, so, and 2 Force users, too. So that's why I say I think it has to be one of the Force users available. I think tie in with you will be left behind here for something what we don't know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's such a good idea. I wish I thought that.
I think we'll get some expansion on the Sabine and Ahsoka rift, because that still exists. We still don't have the facts surrounding Sabine's parents or Sabine's family's death on Mandalore, and why Ahsoka's to blame for that. What caused their separation in the first place? We still don't have any of that information. And then, like I said, this is not a prediction for next episode, but this is a prediction for the next season or the movie. We're going to get good guy Shin Hati. I really, really do sincerely believe that we will eventually have some Ahsoka Tano sired Jedi Order with Jason and Shin and Ezra and Sabine and Ahsoka. perhaps rivaling Luke's, and not rivalry, but as another option, as an alternative to Luke's, and perhaps as an alternative to Rey's during the New Jedi Order era in 15 years, whenever that movie gets made.
Yeah, it also lets a lot of people survive, that weren't part of Luke's Luke's order.
Right. And, people can complain and be like, well, that undermines the fact that it says Luke is the last Jedi. And it's like, yeah, but Yoda literally says, the last of the Jedi you are, and that's just not true. Like, Yoda's not omniscient. It's not his fault, but that's not true. And so we don't have to be adhered to the fact that Luke says the same damn thing. He's been isolated for 15 years or however long he's been on Octo. So, all right, any other bold and exciting predictions, fellas?
Oh, that was really my big one. Was I think we're getting people left behind in this place on this planet, and in later seasons we might have to see two opposing forces working together for a bigger goal.
Colin, anything else? Last words?
I said everything. I think
he's saving it all for the Always in Motion episode we're going to do in 2 weeks.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, after the season of Ahsoka, we won't have an Always in Motion segment next week on our regular episode, because the episode after that will be completely dedicated to predicting the future. And so that wraps up our Always in Motion segment. We're going to now head into our Patreon-powered segment, How the Force Works.
That's not how the Force works.
All right, now we have our How the Force Works segment. And so for our listeners who may be unfamiliar, this is our Patreon-powered segment where our Patreon subscribers get to ask us a question, and we will answer it here live on the show. We've got all kinds of tiers over on Patreon, so go check that out. They start at $1. And so right now, we have a question from Tristan, and that question is, what is your favorite Star Wars quote? Sai, you're the guest, so why don't you lead us off? What's your very favorite Star Wars quote?
I did I was at work today, and you let me know what this was about, this question. And I really thought on it for a while, and I was like, man, there's so many good classic ones. And in the end, I settled on one that I've just always loved, and it's such a powerful line delivered by the infamous, or I should just say the famous, Christopher Lee. And that would be, good. Twice the pride, double the fall.
That's cool. That's
in reference to, of course, Anakin and Obi-Wan, because minutes later it's proven ironic too, in that Dooku loses his head right after saying that. Those are some of his last words, and I've always loved that quote because it's such a cool line. It's just such a neat line. It's such a cool thing to say for a bad guy, for a villain.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm a known fan of Dooku. I mean, he's my favorite Sith. By far. He surpasses Palpatine for me and Vader, and I just really, really like Dooku, especially after those Tales of the Jedi episodes that deepened his character so much. And so that's a great line. That may be my favorite line said by a bad guy, in fact. I think that's a good one. Yeah. Maybe when he's interrogating Obi-Wan in Attack of the Clones, he drops some pretty good ones.
Yeah, talking about the Sith are in control, you just don't know it. Right. That was another good
and I
one.
like the line that he delivers when he's talking about the absence of Qui-Gon, and he goes, I wish you were here. I could use a friend right now.
Yes,
that was the moment that really humanizes Dooku, and I liked that one.
That is great.
I gotta say, my answer to this question will probably be a surprise to nobody, and it certainly won't be a surprise to you guys. It comes from my favorite movie. It comes from my favorite character. And that is, you failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi like my father before me. And if someone asked me to describe Star Wars in one sentence, that's what I would say.
That's cool.
That is the best way to describe Star Wars in this redemption, in this overcoming temptation, in this overcoming evil. All of Star Wars' morality is wrapped up in that one line by Luke.
Such a great line.
And you probably got the best quote.
Yeah, that's a really good one because it does encapsulate a lot of Star Wars.
Yeah.
So I've been spinning my wheels on this one since we found out the question. I really can't pinpoint it. I will say it's really easy to fall into some trap of a meme, right? Have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? Or did you ever hear? Yeah, but. And then, like one of my favorite characters is Darth Vader, and he has so many cool things. Be careful not to choke on your aspirations. That's from Rogue One, right? Mm-hmm. So not one of the more conventional cream of the crop, tip of the top ones, but like another one I really like is, don't be too proud of this technological terror you've constructed. The ability to destroy a planet is insignificant to the power of the Force.
That's a good one.
That's a really good one. But one, I really, in researching this, because there's too many aspects. I want to even say weapons are my religion, right? So the one that I want to give a lot of credence to, and it's probably easily overlooked, is by Obi-Wan Kenobi speaking to Luke Skywalker, is the Force is what gives a Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. I mean, what have we been talking about the whole time? It's literally that. So that's a really cool one. So that's what I'm going to go with.
That line's the base for probably my favorite aspects of Star Wars and the Force mysticism. And every time we find some new, weird, wacky element of the Force, it can almost always be explained by that line. And so it's also, the baseline for the fact that midichlorians exist and what the living Force is. And it's just, in general, a great line because it is such a mysterious line when it came out. And despite 40 years of history, it continues to be a very mysterious line.
It really does. But, man, what a great question this was.
Yeah, this was a stellar question.
Really,
really,
question.
really happy. Loved answering this one. And if you think that you've got a good question for us, just head on over to patreon.com/Star Wars Station. Take a look, find the tier that fits in best for you, and start joining one of our best communities we've got out there. So that wraps up our How the Force Works segment, and we're now going to take a deep dive into the Star Wars news of the week. We're going to talk about all of the news affecting Star Wars. There's a lot of it. Usually, we try to do 3 to 5 stories, and this one we landed around 4, but there were a lot of honorable mentions that I almost included, but they were just a little too on the periphery. So we're going to dive right now into the HoloNet news segment.
You made the HoloNet.
Thanks, Sabine. It's always topical to have that sound effect while we're watching Ahsoka. We've got 4 pretty big news stories, and they all are dancing around, but we would be remiss if we did not mention the biggest news story, not really just in Star Wars, but kind of in the world this week, and that is that the writer's strike is supposed to end on Wednesday. The leadership vote has concluded, and they've sent the vote to the membership, but this is going to end a massive, massive writer's strike that has been going on for 148 days.
Yeah, I'm so glad this is finished. I was around for the last one. I think y'all were really young. And
I was 9.
It disrupted a lot of stuff. Shows, it's not the same as it was today, but entire shows cratered back then. And
right, Heroes, right, got canceled.
Heroes, that's the most notable one.
Yeah, their season got destroyed.
But they even tried to make some more stuff, and it didn't work. Because writers are employed for a reason.
Yeah.
They really are. And I encourage you to be a writer. Start writing stuff down. Do the Jerry Seinfeld trick of getting the calendar up and putting X on it every day. And it's something that might be a slight regret for me. I think people tell me I write really well, and I think there's a different version of me that is writing was out there with those guys or something, But still, it's so this. Also, the actors are on strike. SAG Guild, Screen Actors Guild. And so I don't recall them ever being on strike. And now that this writer's strike has been resolved, this will hopefully cascade down into them and we can get back on track. Because the high-quality stuff needs to keep pumping. We don't want any trash out there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely. I don't want to sound bad here. Of course, I'm happy that the strike is over and everyone's going to be getting back to work and everything. What was the final resolution? Just because I'm curious, did it come out in their favor on this strike?
So I think I'm no commentator on how this stuff works. I think it probably came out in their favor. I'd be remiss to say if the studios didn't take some wins. But there's 2 notable things. One, just in general, that I just felt like we should talk about, and that was the writers got a lot of AI protections, which was basically saved the career, right? Like, it basically saved the industry of writing, and not like Ahsoka, and not like massive productions. I don't know if those were ever going to go AI, but writing commercials, writing jingles, things like that, things that studios easily could have given to AI to save money. There's a lot of protections for writers from AI now, which is a good thing, and that's the one that I hope to see the most come out of the actors' strike as well, is the not using AI deepfakes of actors' faces and things like that, because I'm just not. That technology's not there, and I know those studios are ready to cut those corners, and I'm not. I don't want them to do that.
That technology is cool, and I think historical figures. I'd like to see George Washington or Abraham Lincoln do something in some sort of setting. I don't want to see Abraham Lincoln vampire hunter
with the real.
You don't want to see a
Lincoln.
classic,
With the real Lincoln.
The real digitally stand-in Lincoln face.
but like. If Disney made something...
That's crazy. I cannot believe that you put that out there. that is totally going to happen.
It sounds silly, but we need to keep it based in reality. That's my point.
I would say even still, I don't know, even for historical figures, only because, and I wouldn't even thought of this if you hadn't used Lincoln as the example, but Daniel Day-Lewis's performance in that Lincoln movie... I mean, I wouldn't want to change that for anything. It was so good. He
That's
won
my
an Oscar
point.
for it.
You need actors who are doing the thing, not what some amalgam of that a soulless computer has put together.
And when this kind of can go back to the early days of CGI too, before it was perfected, and even now, I think especially AI, yes, it can create a human model of a face, whatever, you can upload it. It's never going to look just perfect. Just like how CGI never looks quite perfect. It can get very close. But I think there's too much in the facial expressions especially to ever get rid of, full stop human actors, and, which I don't see that happening. I don't think it's going to be replaced by all AI and we're going to have a lineage of AI. But I just think that humans have a much more natural place in acting than AI implements.
Well, let's get serious here for just a minute. It's fun to crack a joke about Abraham Lincoln or George Washington or some political or even famous actor that you really like doing something silly like being a vampire hunter. But the reality is it's easy for some person with a nefarious AI thing to cross some moral lines that an actress would never do.
Yes.
That we don't even. This is what this is for, and that line for me, I hope, is never crossed with this kind of technology, because it's only going to get easier, it's only going to get better, it's only going to get cheaper.
So the other dimension of the concessions made that really affect, I think, Star Wars specifically, is there are now writer minimums for writing rooms on television. And so for projects like Ahsoka, it was a one-man band. I mean, Dave wrote the whole thing. I'm pretty sure Jon Favreau and Dave are the only two that write The Mandalorian. There's writers' rooms for Andor, maybe. But Star Wars has not been known to have writers' rooms for their live-action stuff. They're really like, here's a project, and this one person is the end-all, be-all for the writing of it. And so the writer rooms minimum is going to add a really interesting dimension, because you're going to have characters like Ahsoka. Dave knows her in and out. Would this show have benefited from a writer's room? Who's to say? I mean, I just don't know. I'm not willing to make that assertion one way or the other. There's not a minimum for movies, but George Lucas is the end-all, be-all for Star Wars writing. And so he wrote these movies, and they were the way they were because of George. And he didn't take... I mean, he took outside opinions and input, but they were his vision. And so when you throw more people into the room, you get some really good stuff, because there's a lot of projects that have been great because of writers' rooms, but you can also just have too many cooks in the kitchen. And so I'll be interested to see how that line is straddled here, and I'll be interested to see how willing Disney is to be paying for writers' rooms on every show. I'm not sure if numbers of TV shows might go down because of the writers' room minimums now, but I'm not sure. I just don't know. That's all speculation.
I bet we get better quality out of it.
I agree. I think so too. I think coming off a strike, we're going to see some really impressive work. Especially, I think people are really going to be, which hopefully they are getting paid more, and like some of their demands were met and such. I think we're going to see some high quality stuff coming out of this strike. I think we're going to all be pretty impressed.
I gotcha. So that wraps up our news on the strike. And now we're going to get into our more just, nitty-gritty Star Wars news itself. And so this one hurt, man. I was sad to see this news story. There's been, for a long time, Guillermo del Toro, people have talked about that he wanted to work on a Star Wars project. He'd been out there saying that he wanted to work on a Star Wars project. Well, the other day, he said that he worked with the guy who wrote, gosh, I really should know his name, and I feel bad that I don't, and I need it in front of me in my notes, but it was the man who wrote The Dark Knight.
David S. Goyer.
David S. Goyer wrote The Dark Knight?
Pretty sure I'm just going to be here.
Okay, all right. So, David S. Goyer was going to write the script, and Guillermo del Toro was going to direct a movie about a character, and del Toro was not able to come out and say who the character was specifically, but he did tweet, I can give you 2 letters, J and double B. And that pretty much only points to one direction. In interviews they used to give, which was Guillermo del Toro had this grand vision for a dark, gritty, maybe rated R, or at least right on the cusp of rated R, Godfather-style story about Jabba the Hutt's rise to becoming a criminal underboss. And I am so disappointed that this isn't going to get made. This may be, of all the rumored or canceled Star Wars projects, the one that I might be the most bummed is not happening.
Wow. I'm very sorry to hear that for you, Carter, especially hearing how excited you were. This is a situation I wasn't super aware of, but hearing it come from you, Carter, what a cool storyline that would have been.
Right?
What an awesome thing to see and follow. A prominent character like Jabba, that would have been very, very neat, seeing him work his way up through the Hutt families. I would have very much enjoyed seeing that, and now even just hearing it, for the first time really today, it is a bit upsetting.
It's a bummer, right?
Yeah,
it's just
it's
a bummer.
a bummer.
It's like, your day's worse now that you know that this isn't going to get made.
Yeah, I think Solo undeservedly messed up a bunch of things. Right?
I agree. I would blame the reaction to Solo, because Colin and I are both pretty big fans of the movie. We think Solo's good. We want Solo 2 to happen. I'm excited the Lando movie is in the works, but Solo gummed up the works of a lot of things. I still think, I'll still say to this day that it was because of The Last Jedi, and that The Last Jedi is what gummed up the works, but that Solo took the brunt of it because it came 6 months after. But regardless, who's to really know? And there were many confounding factors. That movie was rewritten and reshot, and it wasn't promoted very well. They had specials at Denny's for Solo, and that was like the biggest promotional partner. And so, there was a lot wrong there, but it's sad to see the repercussions of that movie's box office still hitting Star Wars. And I still don't think we know the full extent of what was planned then. And it's going to take us years to continue to dig stuff out, and years to continue to see what could have been.
Because I think we can all agree almost they've missed the mark on so much stuff, except for the one of the guys who messed up Game of Thrones. I'm glad they didn't get a movie.
Who messed up? I wasn't a Game of Thrones watcher. That's
boy.
just such a charged sentence.
But like this one, with this news, it feels like, oh, are you a director worth anything? Hey, come make a Star Wars movie. It feels like that's what they're going. And on one hand, I'm glad they kind of pulled back a little bit, because we need more Tony Gilroys out there delivering weaving gold, right?
Well, and
but at the same time, I'd rather take a chance on these things to try and get some more stuff, because this story sounds amazing. The Lando stuff is going to be so cool.
I'll say what really grinds my gears is the fact that basically since Disney has acquired the company, that we are promoting Star Wars movies not based on the fact that they're Star Wars, and not based on the fact that, oh, this is a Han Solo story, or, oh, this is a story about the group that stole the Death Star plans. But no, this is Taika Waititi's movie. This is Sean Levy's movie. This is Rian Johnson's trilogy. Like, we're promoting James Mangold. All these people. We're promoting their movies. Even Dave Filoni. Even Dave. We should not be out here promoting Star Wars based on these big-name directors that we got attached, because the first 3 Star Wars movies are Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Neither of those directors were big names at the time. They came in, they did a phenomenal job. People love them now, but at the time, it wasn't, oh, yeah, we're getting Kasdan to direct this movie. That is not how the sequel to Star Wars was promoted, and I hate that that's the direction we're taking on how Star Wars movies are promoted. And, oh, the upcoming Charmaine Obaid-Chinoy film, and it's like, man, it's the upcoming Rey New Jedi Order film, and she is the director, and she's going to do a good job, hopefully, but we don't need to be promoting it on the backs of the directors. Star Wars can carry its own weight. Star Wars is the largest franchise in human history.
And at the very least, Filoni has a pedigree of success with the subject material. All these other guys don't.
But it doesn't really... I mean, even still, Filoni, it's not his thing. Filoni's still just a member of the group. He's still just a contributor to this giant shared universe that we love.
I agree. I think you make a really good point with that, is that a lot of it is put on the directors, like, oh yeah, like you were saying, it's a Filoni film or whatever it might be. And I'll say, I think, really post-sequels, since we got all the new content and everything, we might have hit a point of almost no return past that with all the different people that have come and gone. There's so many different shows and directors. I think to an extent it makes it a bit easier for people to know what show is being talked about. For me, my only exception for it is Dave Filoni. Anytime I hear Dave Filoni's name attached to something, I'm a huge Dave Filoni stan. Anything he touches turns to gold. I'm a full believer. But I absolutely see where you're coming from with that, Carter. Yeah.
Well, and I'm not immune to this. I'm not to say I am not excited that James Mangold is directing this Dawn of the Jedi film, because I loved Logan. And I think James Mangold is a cracking director. I mean, he's going to do a good job. And so it is reassuring to hear we've got some really great directors and producers and writers attached to these products and to these programs, but I still don't think that's the lead for the movie.
It should be referenced in that sense, kind of.
I mean, we've got Sean Levy, Rian Johnson, Taika Waititi, all have movies, tenuously still in production, and we have no idea what the movies are even about. And all you need is a one-sentence tagline. Rey's New Jedi Order film, Dawn of the Jedi film, Mandoverse film. That's a fine way to promote. Give
Lando
us
movie.
The content, and then give us the director. And then the director can build hype on the content, not the other way around. And that's where it just feels like Lucasfilm is not coming to people with an idea and saying, you know, we would love if you directed this movie about Corky Kryze. No, they're saying, hey, give us your movie idea about, you know, whoever, about Sebulba. Like, it's just not the right way to go about it. If for Star Wars, this is how you make other movies. Star Wars is an exception to other movies. But enough on the bummer talk. Now we are going to get to something that's really exciting. All three of us are going to be really jazzed about this, and that is Cameron Monaghan has confirmed that a third Star Wars Jedi video game is in development, and so the sequel to Jedi Survivor is being made.
Boy, that's so exciting. What new saber stance are they going to have?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love the new stuff. I love the new settings. And I really love, most of all, a unique story that adds to the universe. What was the hidden planet?
Kobo.
No,
Kobo wasn't the hidden one.
Was
Tanalorr
was
the hidden one.
Tanalorr was the hidden planet. Such cool storylines that harken back to Old Republic.
Very
Give me
good.
More. Give me more.
Very excited. What is the other game? What is the name of the other game? Outlaws? Is that it?
Outlaws is, yeah. That's the one that should come out next year.
Excited for that as well. Definitely excited about Survivor 3. I know we don't have an official name for it yet, but stick with that. Also, I just want to touch on what, you know, as Star Wars fans, what a fortunate time for us to be alive.
We say that all the time.
We do, yeah.
I mean, how lucky that there was, you know, such a big gap between the first movies and the prequels and the sequels. With, you know, you had some filler like the Clone Wars and Rebels was in at that time too, and now we just have this influx.
It's a deluge of content.
Yeah,
I cannot
Pick
imagine
what you want. Buffet
doing a news segment in 2006, or let alone doing a news segment in 1980 or 1991. Like, you're just like, what is there to talk about? Like, Star Wars is dead. And now it just doesn't ever feel like it's going to end, which is a good thing. I mean, we're always welcoming new Star Wars content. And, you know, that's the thing about it. We may be critical and we may have nitpicks, but we're ready for all the new Star Wars content. We're giving it all a try. And if I don't like something, I focus on the thousands of other entries into the Star Wars universe that I do like.
Definitely. And a very good way to be, you know, always stay open for everything that's coming.
And there's so much opportunity. I think we posted a meme today, you know, talking about the Night Troopers and Enoch, Captain Enoch, and it had the Matthew McConaughey all stressed out smoking a cigarette. Cosplayers.
Oh yeah, I did see that one.
Oh, I want one of those Kintsugi Stormtrooper suits. I want a Stormtrooper suit bad enough. Now I got to have the cool new one.
Yeah, you have to have both of them, right?
I really want a clone armor set, man. It's kind of a hard thing to pull the trigger on sometimes.
Oh, it is. I get it, but it's. I got to do some cosplay sometime.
It's gonna be worth
Hey,
it.
you got a better one than any of us. More complete. You got the helmet and the vest and the rank pips. It's cool.
Yeah, I do appreciate that.
All I got is my
like
saber and my robe. I do need a good
That's what I
cosplay because
got.
I love to cosplay. I
Yeah,
don't know if you
Sai's
guys
a
know
big
about
cosplayer.
know that about me. I'm a big Critical Role cosplayer,
Yeah.
but I've always loved Star Wars, and I need to get one better than just my Sith robe and my dual lightsaber. I might do Maul, do a bald cap or something.
A Maul would be good. A Maul would be very good. So our last story is also exciting. It's less exciting than Jedi Game because it's like, ooh, it's still years away. It's still 5 years away at the minimum. But that is that the Star Wars Eclipse would like to remind you, hey, we still exist. Eventually, it's going to come out.
Thank goodness.
That was that Star Wars game that released a trailer, I think, in 2019. But they released a trailer, and then nothing else happened. And then they have not said anything. And they're like, oh, yeah, we released all these cool trailer images, and we basically don't have a story built around them. This was all just like random test footage. And so we don't know anything about the game other than it's set in the High Republic era. They gave a little bit of detail, new, that they said there's going to be multiple playable characters. There's going to be intricately branching narratives. There is no game over. Anybody can die. Anything can happen. And the story will continue, that those signatures are still going to be there. So it's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I want to see how they play the whole there is no game over, because you have things like that have tried to do it before and then become successful in the future, like No Man's Sky initially was a total
It was a
flop.
disaster.
Huge
They
disaster.
oversold the game.
Yeah, and they did, and I hope that doesn't happen with this. I hope they don't try and push it beyond what it should be. You know, I'm more of a fan of give me a story with an ending, you know, wrap something up. I like that they're trying to be adventurous with it. I just hope they don't push it so far to that point that it goes over and breaks.
Now,
you know?
I'll say that since this is Quantic Dream, and we know it's not open world, so it may not suffer from the No Man's Sky syndrome. But what I've heard from other Quantic Dream games, specifically Detroit Becoming Human, which is their most recent one, is it got a lot of really good reviews, especially for the story. But there's no replayability whatsoever. It's like the story goes on, but once you play all the branches of story, it's you were never going to pick that game up again. It's like you watched a movie, and that was it. And then if you wanted to refresh yourself on the story, you're going to go watch a YouTube video. Yeah. And so that may be the case with Eclipse. I don't know. That's just speculation, but they're the studio that's making it. So it wouldn't surprise me if that were the case.
I remember initially seeing the trailer for Eclipse, I think back in 2019, and I was so excited, and I still am. I'm excited. I love Star Wars games. I want more of them all the time. Crying shame about Battlefront 3.
Yeah.
Sad day that happened, but I do hold out hope for this. Like I said, those are really my only fears about it, and I do have faith that with the era of gaming we're now into and moving into, with people expecting better, higher quality product, I hope they take their time. I hope they push out a very, very good, very refined game, very finished game.
I couldn't agree more.
That trailer looked like the Tau from 40K invading the Star Wars universe, if you ask me. So
I remember you saying that. I don't know what any of those words mean, but I do know what you're saying. I do know what you're saying. 40K fans will understand.
Yeah, they're just aliens with no nose and they're blue. For the greater good. I guess we'll see. I mean, we still don't have enough to make any judgment calls, if you ask me.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. All right, guys, that wraps up our HoloNet news segment, so we're going to be rolling into our very last segment of the night, and that is Star Wars Moment of the Week.
We would be honored if you would join us.
All right, once again, Sai, you are the guest, so you get to go first. What is your Star Wars Moment of the Week?
How very kind of you letting me go first again. Thank you very much. Well, my Star Wars Moment of the Week, and I'm going to try and go into this without giving too much away, but I have been fleshing out and working on the campaign that we all play. Any listeners that aren't on Patreon, you can subscribe to the Patreon and listen to our RPG at Star Wars Edge of the Empire. And I've been working on a few characters, working on a couple of homebrews for this big upcoming fight that's fixing to happen right at the beginning of our next session, it looks like. Also playing around with the trope of another character that is going somewhere they've never been. And you guys probably know who I'm talking about, but I don't really want to give anything away. But that's really been about it for me. It's just fleshing out the campaign, trying to make a really good world for the players, and just a place that everyone has fun working with characters, with players. It's one of my favorite parts of running an RPG. So that's really about it for me.
When are we playing that again?
Soon, hopefully. We all got to get our
Very
schedules aligned. But I got to say, Si, we are super grateful for the work you put into it, because we all have a blast. All four of us have a great time. All the listener feedback is super positive. We have a great time playing that RPG. I look forward to it every time we have a game scheduled, and I know that you do a ton of legwork on it. So we are very grateful for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I appreciate it. It's what I love to do. I'm a D&D guy, and now with the Star Wars system, I love it. I get a lot of joy out of it, and it makes my day. It makes all that effort worth it when I see my players get to laugh and smile and really be in their character. And occasionally you get some tears, and those are always really high moments for a GM like me.
I love how swingy the dice rolls are in that game. You think something's a sure thing, and then you just blank out. And
Yeah.
Right. And
We
then
had
you have the
someone do an
big
impossible
moments that are like, I don't know how this is going to work, and it does. Just like Star Wars, though. It's really, they capture the narrative aspect of Star Wars with those dice, I think, really well, in that they're able to show, some character who may not actually be a crack pilot gets the one time off that they needed, and that's just the will of the Force.
And on the other end of
like
it, you'll flub something that you think is going to be super easy. Like one character gets a bunch of bonuses to a basic roll, and he'll still fail those, and Sai's able to come up with a really cool, a funny thing that happens as a result of that. Of a roll that is like presumed to be just a super easy thing, and he has to sit there and rack his brain for a second for something funny to happen, and he delivers every time. It's actually really good.
Well,
Go listen to those
appreciate it.
episodes, you can see what I'm talking about.
I appreciate it very much. Yeah, sometimes crazy things happen, especially in RPGs like that. But I'm curious to hear y'all's Star Wars moment of the week as well.
Go ahead, Colin. What's
Oh
yours?
my
You're
gosh.
yawning in the
Mine-
microphone.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Mine's huge. I've been up late. I've had a long day. I told y'all last week I went to Galaxy's Edge and did all the other Disney things. It's a lot of fun. Of course, if you're following our Instagram page, I tried to put up there as much as I could going on with all of that. I pledged my loyalty as Darth Vader's apprentice. It was really cool. I got to see Chewbacca, got to see BB-8, got to hang out with Disney princesses. Galaxy's Edge is so fun. Kylo Ren's walking around, stormtroopers are walking around. Unfortunately, what is it? Hera and Ahsoka are only walking around in the West Coast version. That was disappointing. But I got to see Rey at one point. There's a bespoke character, I forget her name, who was made, lives on Batuu. She's a spy. Saw her at one point. But more importantly, that one thing that was really cool was and I'm a total sucker for this. They hooked me in. Was at Savi's lightsaber workshop, and I'm not going to give any spoilers because my good friends are sitting here that didn't experience this. But you build the basic premise is you build your own lightsaber, and there's a whole process that goes with that, and it's as best as they can do on Batuu, right? You're not going to Yavin or anything, but they came out with a version 2.0. They got 4 different kinds, and of each of the 4 different kinds, they came out with a different version. And so I went and did that again.
Is this your second or third?
Second one.
Okay.
And I bought Anakin Skywalker's. So right now from Galaxy's Edge, I've got Dooku, Obi-Wan Kenobi, the Darksaber, and Anakin's, and then the 2 custom lightsabers.
And your kids built droids, right?
Yeah,
Did they do the droids?
The kids built droids, and that whole experience is super cool. You walk in, you register, and you pick out what style you want. You can build a BB style, an R2 style, or the style like Chopper or R5D4, right? Who the Mando guy, and all the little pieces are going out through a back room on a conveyor belt, and so the kids can pick out the colors of what kind of droids they want. My daughter picked out an all purple BB style droid, and Charles wanted to make an R2D2. I think he has red legs instead of the white and blue legs. You can add personality chips to them. And then I almost bought it. It's too much, it's way overpriced. And because it would have been really cool. It was a set of individual plastic droids. And they had a KX droid and a protocol droid. And Babu Frick was in this little box set.
Nice.
I'm kind of disappointed, but $75 is just a little too much. That seems kind of out of pocket being at Disney World. Should have sucked it up, but whatever. And then there's the coolest thing I bought at this was it looks like an Imperial credit. It's got Arabesh on it, but it's a gift card. I loaded up with some money and paid for our meal at Oga's Cantina with it.
Yeah, that's
so
awesome.
cool. It's just, and it's not like a little piece of plastic. It's just a weighty piece of metal. Y'all saw it before this. It is so cool.
Yeah, and you posted it on our Instagram for the listeners.
Everything being immersed in that environment is beyond cool. Just sitting there waiting for a character. Oh, and we saw Din Djarin. Me and my son walked off, and he's got Grogu in his pouch, and he interacted with Charlie. So cool.
And Charlie's a huge Baby Yoda fan, right?
Both my kids were walking around with the Baby Yoda shirts on the whole time.
Nice. Very cool.
Very cool. I'm curious about Galaxy's Edge. How big is it? Just from end to end. What's the size on this place? Because I've never been. Obviously,
yeah, I've never been. I want to go so bad.
Quarter mile, maybe.
You bet.
Okay, very cool.
That's huge.
Yeah, that is big. That's awesome. I'm sure that was great. I have my Star Wars moment of the week, and I'm super grateful for it because it's something I never thought we'd get to do, but it is a lot of fun that our friends over at Random House Worlds are now sending us review copies of books. Colin and I have done enough book reviews, and now they're sending us advanced copies so we can be right on to date, so we don't have to try and slam a book in 3 or 4 days right when it comes out and hits shelves. And so they just sent us their next adult novel, which is a High Republic novel. It's called The Eye of Darkness. It's the very first novel in Phase 3. And anyone who listens to this podcast knows I'm a pretty avid Star Wars reader, but I've really, really been trying to keep up with the High Republic. I've read everything except for the junior novels now on both phases of the High Republic, and so I was primed and ready to enter Phase 3. I was primed and ready to read this new book, and I finished it in 3 days.
Oh, my God.
And so I just stay up in bed and read on my laptop, and it's been wonderful. We can't give any kind of review on it right now. We're on a review embargo, so I won't give any of my thoughts or anything on the book, but it has just been such a treat to get to have a glimpse of these books a little bit early and to really see all the dots connect and for us to be able to give our thoughts here soon. When Ahsoka wraps up and that book comes out on November 14th, you guys can expect an episode the next day.
Yeah, and I'll say I've finished the first book. I'm getting into all this other stuff. The antagonist for these series, I can't say on the third. I have no idea, literally. But the antagonist in these first books, and I think continue on, is extremely scary, extremely cool, extremely capable. And I like watching this stuff for villains. How much time we start talking about Baylan, right? So the villains in this are really cool. And the Jedi in this really deliver across a lot of different aspects between Padawans, Masters, accomplished people, aged Jedi. So much fun.
The cast of characters is astounding. I mean, if you think there's a lot of Jedi in the prequels, your mind's blown by how many fleshed out and well done characters there are in the high. Like, it's not like, here they just put a bunch of Jedi in there for the sake of there being a lot of Jedi, and there's this random person with a one-off line. I mean, you could meet a character in one chapter of the adult novel, and they have a whole dedicated story in the comic book. They have a whole mini-series about them. They have a whole audio drama about just them. And it's all just been really fun to see how interconnected this media tie-in has been. It's a really good throwback to the new Jedi Order era books that came out when I was 2. So I'm acting like I know what it's like. But from what I've heard and read about that time, that was a great interconnected media blitz. And this one has gone above and beyond that. It's probably the most ambitious publishing project Star Wars has ever done.
So much fun. Si, have you read any of those?
So I read Light of the Jedi, and then I have not read any more High Republic since, which is a crying shame. I really need to get back into it. I've been just a bit lackadaisical, not really on my reading in general, but on my Star Wars reading. Definitely. I've kind of fallen off a little bit, I'll admit that. So I need to pick back up the mantle.
Yeah, definitely got to get back into it. We'll have tons of good High Republic conversations. But, guys, that wraps up our podcast today. It was a doozy. We are so grateful that Cy came on to enjoy this episode with us, give us his thoughts, and we appreciate it. Cy, any final words?
Thank you guys so much for having me. You know, it's always a pleasure, whether it be the RPG or doing something live. You guys having me on the podcast, it's always just so appreciated. I love being here. I love chopping shop with you guys, talking Star Wars. It's one of my all-time favorite things, and I just can't wait to do it again. So thank you guys once again, and, check us out on all the other platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. We love talking Star Wars with you, Cy. If you want to hear more Cy, he is the ringleader and the mastermind behind that RPG. You can check that out at patreon.com/Star Wars Station. And for just $2 at the $2 tier, you can get access to all of these RPGs. It's hours of content. It's live video. It is a live play. There's beautiful art that goes along with each one of these.
Fully produced?
Fully produced. It's a wonderful, we have sound effects. It's a great time. Cy's story is golden, and I'd encourage everybody to, fork over the $2 just to check it out, just see if you like it. You can check out the first 2 episodes audio only on the regular podcast feed. So please give us a listen and check out all of our other offerings at Patreon, because I feel like we have a lot of stuff for everybody to check out. That is patreon.com/Star Wars Station. You can also find us on all kinds of social media. We are at SW_station on Twitter. If you want to just see me tweet crazy Star Wars thoughts all the time, then you can go check us out there. We've got a rockin' meme page on Instagram. It is StarWars.station. We love interacting with people over on Instagram. And we're all over Facebook. We've got a Facebook page. We've got a Facebook group, Star Wars Station Cantina. We've got a very active Discord if you want to get in any kind of scraps over there. Pleasant scraps. It's all about having fun. No one's really criticizing anybody, but it's definitely a hot platform for good-spirited debate. We try to be a super open Star Wars community where we've got fans of all kinds of stuff. We got people who love everything. We got people who only love the OT and everything in between. And so you guys can check us out on all of our communities. You can check us out on YouTube at Star Wars Station. And you can check out Colin's other project, Warhammer Station. Where can they check that out, Colin?
Yeah, it's on YouTube, warhammer.station, on Instagram at warhammer.station. You can go to warhammerstation.com and pick up some of my tokens and other products. I've been working hard this week to get more stuff on the website, get it promoted, better organized. Trying to post some more YouTube content. I got a lot of personal things going on that's really limited my schedule. But the wheels are in motion. Things are looking up and up, and the future's bright with all that stuff. So if you're like 40K, you want to know more about that stuff, hit your boat to this stuff too. The station media aspect is you want to be here for this. You really do.
Yep, absolutely. And you guys want to check us out on Twitch. We're at twitch.tv/station media, because you can just catch random things going on there. Colin paints on there sometimes. Cy and I have been grinding Battlefront 2 this week. Colin can't play with us because he doesn't have an Xbox, but we have just been hardcore playing that game. It's been streamed on there, so go check us out there. And, anytime there's a new Star Wars video game, you can guarantee that I'll be on there until I beat it at least. And I'd never finished Cage's Jedi Survivor missions, and so I've really been thinking about how I need to go do those bounty missions and be streaming those.
That'd be fun.
And so I might be doing that soon. That's just a maybe. But, guys, we really appreciate your listenership. We appreciate all of the support. And if you love the podcast, if you're a consistent listener of the podcast, the absolute number one thing you can do to help us is go to Spotify, go to Apple Podcasts, and drop us a 5-star review. Just leave a like on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube, but right there in the reviews of the podcast app is how we get this podcast to continue to go up the charts. It's how we continue to get more and more listeners, is by you sharing us there and by sharing us through word of mouth. Tell your friends. Ahsoka's about to wrap up. I feel like, had some good insights on Ahsoka throughout the episodes and throughout the season, and I'd love for you guys to tell your friends to, hey, go check out these guys. They've got some smart stuff to say about Ahsoka Episode 7. And then we'll be there for the finale. We're going to catch you guys next week. We're super excited about it. It's going to be a huge episode. I guarantee there's going to be a lot to talk about. So, until we catch you guys next week, the only thing that you've got to do is stay wizard.